Welcome to Heroes Have Wings, the podcast that gives a voice to the unsung heroes of Army aviation. I'm your host, Jason Santiago. For the Army aviators, crew chiefs, and flight medics who put it all on the line in the heat of battle, this is their opportunity to share untold stories of courage, sacrifice, and unbreakable will. From their beginnings to the battlefield, you hear about their hardships, the moments of doubt, and how they overcame impossible odds to save lives. These warriors didn't just fight for survival, they put others above themselves, embodying the true spirit of heroism and selfless service. Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to Heroes Have Wings. Today, we're honored to feature Andrew Six, a soldier whose journey from a humble upbringing as one of 9 children to becoming a distinguished Army combat and flight medic is nothing short of inspiring. From surviving a life-altering attack in Afghanistan to earning the Distinguished Flying Cross, Andrew's dedication to service and saving lives is a testament to resilience and faith. Now a senior medical advisor stationed at Fort Benning, Andrew continues to lead with heart, focusing on faith, family, and fitness. His story is one of selflessness, pushing limits, and finding purpose in every challenge. Get ready to be inspired by a true hero who never backs down. Andrew Six, welcome to Heroes Have Wings.
Thanks, man. It's really good to be here. It's good to see you again.
Man, it's good to see you. How you doing?
Good, man.
Man, I'm happy to see you.
Yeah, man. This is really interesting experience, and it's going to be kind of cool to go through all these different experiences from my past and from the Army, things we've shared together, and get into it.
I'm super excited. How was the trip?
Dude, it's really easy drive. My kids are up here with their with my in-laws, with their grandparents, and so I haven't seen them in a couple of weeks. So I'm kind of excited to hang out with them before we head back to to Georgia.
Nice. All right, man, let's get it started. Quick hits. Coffee, energy drinks.
Both.
All throughout the day?
Oh, yeah.
All right. City life or country living?
Country.
Summer heat, winter cold?
Summer heat.
Movies or books?
Movies.
Dog person or cat person?
I want to say neither, or maybe both. I'm not sure. We have both. The cats are easy. The dog's crazy. We got the kids a dog, and I wanted the dog for the kids, and the dog's obsessed with only me. And so I'm like, dang it, like you're supposed to be their dog. So both, I guess.
I get it, man. Beach vacation, mountain retreat?
Mountains.
Wake up early, stay up late?
Wake up early.
Action movies or comedies?
Action movies.
Camping or road trip?
Camping.
Texting or calling?
Calling.
Why do you prefer calling?
I just like to talk to people. I like to hear people's voices. I think you can kind of pick up on some of the emotion and the whatever they're talking about. In a text, they might be real serious about something, and you read it a little bit wrong, and you say something dumb, and then you're like, oh crap, I totally missed the cue there. So calling.
I get it, man. I want to let you know, and I want to let the audience know that I'm super excited to have you here today.
Thanks, man.
I think everybody's going to be in for a wonderful ride. Your story is nothing short of amazing. So I'm glad that we're here to tell it.
Yeah.
All right, let's get started. So, one of 9 siblings.
Yeah.
How was that growing up?
Dude, I was born in New York and kind of grew up in Pennsylvania, and it was wild. And there's 9 of us. I'm the middle, so I got 4 older siblings, 4 younger siblings, and my mom stayed home and homeschooled all of us. And so, not only just 9 kids, but 9 kids 24/7 on top of each other. My dad did a lot of kind of different jobs growing up, was always sort of in and out of jobs. He worked for a lot of nonprofit organizations. He worked for the Boy Scouts of America. He worked for some religious organizations. And what I remember is that throughout my childhood, there'd be some sort of almost like corruption in an organization. And he just couldn't stay there, and he would say, they'd say, hey, if you sort of exploit this thing or talk to the wrong person, then we're going to fire you. And he's like, well, I have to do the right thing. And so they'd either make up some situation or they'd let him go. And so he was kind of always between jobs. And so we grew up pretty poor, but I never remember being poor. You know what I mean? We had what we needed. We played outside a lot. I had a lot of hand-me-down clothes from my older brothers and that kind of stuff. But it was a lot of fun. It was great.
Would you agree with me when I say poor is a subjective thing?
Yeah, for sure.
Because you may not have had a lot of money, but just having all those siblings, watching your mom and dad be together, And growing up in that family environment, a lot of people that have money are lacking that.
Yeah. I mean, yeah, it's spot on, right? It's like we were financially maybe poor, but I had a great childhood. And, my siblings, if they listen to this, will joke that like I was the one that wanted to spend money on stupid things. I wanted nicer clothes. And, I remember having, tennis shoes with duct tape around them and gluing the sole back together because my older brother gave them to my next older brother who gave them to me or whatever. And I hated it. I like hated everything about it. I would be like, I want to buy this new shirt or this new pants or whatever. And my brothers would be like, why? Like, it doesn't matter, And so I kind of was the one that like, I was more emotional about it. I wanted my friends to think that I had more or whatever. But yeah, deep down, dude, it was a wild time to be a kid. We would light stuff on fire and play in the woods and do all that kind of stuff.
It sounds exciting, man. Watching your dad do the right thing when during all these, controversial issues dealing with these other organizations, how did that show you growing up that the importance of doing the right thing is probably something that builds a lot of character and something you should stand on?
Yeah. So when I was thinking about doing this interview, and I found myself thinking about my dad quite a bit, and he's alive, he's not gone or anything. But growing up as a kid, I remember not really thinking about it. I'm a kid. It didn't really occur to me. I just remember that we didn't have a lot of money. And I remember one time in the grocery store, my mom saying like, Andrew, put that back. We can't afford it. And I had this like complex, like, oh my gosh, like we're going to be out on the streets or whatever. And we never were, and my family, always like, God will provide what we need, to survive. But to your question, I remember my dad interviewing for some sort of life insurance job. And I was probably in early high school or maybe late middle school, 7th or 8th grade. And I remember him going to the training and he'd come back and he was pretty excited and the salary was going to be much more than he had made previously. And so it was like kind of a very exciting time in our family. And then I remember he went to another training and came back and we had said some prayers and he said, I just don't think this is what I can do. I don't think God's asking me to work for this business. And he was telling us during the training, they were using like video or images of basically tragedies to try to like almost guilt people into buying the life insurance. Here's this, house that burns down and this family is all broken and you should have had life insurance. And he just said like, I can't do that. I can't like sell life insurance on somebody else's like misfortune. And I remember much later in life, actually I was probably deployed thinking about that and being like, wow, that's an impactful part of my life where my dad turned away the better job, the better income, the better providing for his family, which is one of his, responsibilities as a husband and father, for the sort of higher ground, the sort of moral ground of I just don't think I can do that. And me being okay personally, emotionally, mentally with what I do, being the right thing that I do is more important than just the paycheck that I'm going to earn. Yeah. And so like now that's really stuck with me quite a bit. But I don't think at the time I thought about that stuff much.
Yeah, but that says a lot about your dad. And that's shout out to your dad to make sure that he's raising his children and being that example of no matter what, doing the right thing trumps everything else.
Yeah.
And that's something I'm not sure where I learned it, but that's something I carry on even throughout my whole military career. I just always try to do the right thing. It's easy to live life in that capacity.
Yeah, and you don't have regrets, and it's just that's what you're supposed to be doing here anyway, and not to only talk about my dad. Man, my mom is a freaking awesome human being. Also,
but she's
having the 9 of us
exactly,
and then homeschooling all of them, right? And so you think if you have 9 kids and you're homeschooling them, you got some that are in all kinds of different grades. My mom's teaching algebra and calculus, and also the alphabet, and also everything in between at the same time. And she's just always just a sweet woman with a smile on her face. And it's incredible. They're definitely parents to aspire to try to be like and set good examples for me and all of my siblings. And then the other thing I think is important that I learned from my parents is that I remember thinking that service and patriotism were like honorable and noble attributes, right? And very, very strong traditional Catholic family, and those I think attributes sometimes get kind of washed away in discussions based on faith or religion, and that you kind of sometimes miss that like patriotism and service are really, really noble qualities and attributes to sort of aspire to, and none of them really served in the military. My grandparents, I guess, sort of did, in that time that sort of everyone did, but I remember that kind of sticking with me. and at a young age, I want to join the military. I want to serve our country. And so that's the beginning of the story.
Yeah. How was your parents? Are they still together now?
Oh yeah.
Man, that's great.
Something like maybe, they'll probably get mad if I don't know, but something like 45 years maybe.
Man,
something like that.
Now, I actually want to meet your mom and dad now.
Yeah.
Honestly, because for them to stay together through the good times, the bad time, raise 9 children. Your mom is a rock star. Man, your mom's a true rock star. I want to hear her story one day, because for her to make that sacrifice, I think a lot of people miss that. When you're in that marriage, it's all about sacrificing for each other, right? Growing together, making sure that this family that we created, we do what's right for them. Your dad was doing that by making sure he kept his moral compass in alignment. Your mom sacrificing, not even sacrificing, but being an outstanding mom, raising all you guys, homeschooling, and just keeping the family together. That's pretty awesome. And I love to hear those things.
So then, I have 4 brothers and 4 sisters. Mm-hmm. And growing up, we just used to get into all kinds of trouble. And so it's funny that my parents didn't beat us more or just be mad at us more, because we were light things on fire. We burnt stuff in the house we shouldn't. All kinds of just all the stupid things that kids do. Yeah. But yeah, it was pretty wild time to be a kid, I thought.
When you made that decision to join the military, how did that conversation go with your parents?
Yeah, so let me back up a little bit, right? So I most of my family is incredibly intelligent people, and then there's me, and I'm kind of I was struggling, homeschooled in high school. I was struggling with everything. Everything was hard, and I just couldn't kind of find my niche, And I played some sports, but I'm not really good enough at any sports to really have that kind of push me and motivate me. And so somewhere along the way, I joined this organization called the Civil Air Patrol, which is like a youth organization that's a sort of affiliate with the Air Force. And like I think the community soccer coach was part of it and his kids. And so I don't even remember how we got connected, but I joined this organization as a maybe 13 years old or 14 years old. And in Pennsylvania, the big center of that organization is around this search and rescue school. They have this youth search and rescue school teaching kids how to search for missing hunters, lost people, or downed airplanes. And one of the things we do is that we would search for the ELTs of Cessnas and airplanes that would either crash or have hard landings in the community. And so we had this little school where we'd teach people how to do that. And there was a lot of survival training. There was a lot of triangulation type, land nav type training. And somehow that just clicked with me. I loved it. It was military-esque, like we wore a uniform. You had ribbons and badges you got to put on the right way, and that structure. And then this search and rescue portion, you got to be fit. You had obstacle courses you're running and survival in the woods types things. And then I got into EMT school with that program. And so I went to EMT school, and then I was the medic for a search and rescue team. And we'd search for
How old
Cessnas.
Are you?
I think I was 16, because I think in the state of Pennsylvania you have to be at least 16 to go to EMT school. And we searched for crashed airplanes, we searched for missing hunters and people like that. And I really fell in love with what I was doing. And I started volunteering at a fire department in our community. And some being homeschooled, when the state would call and say, hey, there's this crashed airplane or this airplane that failed to report, we need some people to come do it. I'm like, I'm in homeschool, man. I can do whatever I need to. So I would go up to the mountains and we'd go search for these crashed airplanes, and then go back, and I'd tell my mom, hey, I missed 2 days of school, and she'd be like, okay, whatever, make it up, And so anyway, I went to EMT school, and I sort of got more and more fascinated with this kind of EMT medical stuff. And then I became the medic on the team, and I'm taking care of the people that either get hurt, twist an ankle or, fall in the snow kind of thing. And then one day, our local community EMS, ambulance department I worked for, we went on a call where a girl got kicked by a horse. And she was pretty bad off, and the paramedics were there and they were taking care of her. And as an EMT, I'm just like the gopher. I'm just like, run to the ambulance and get blanket or get an oxygen bottle or whatever it was and run back to the medics. And somehow that experience really solidified that I want to do sort of medicine in the field, something that's, not clean, it's not organized, it's not nice, but I kind of feel like this is my calling. Like I feel calm here. I can kind of see that these people need some help, and maybe my demeanor can help them feel more comfortable, and then I can help take care of them. And so about the same time, my older brother commissioned in the Marine Corps. And so I was like, all right, I like medical stuff. I love being a medic. And I also want to join the military. Let me go talk to the Marine Corps. And before I went to talk to my brothers, like, yeah, you got to join the Navy if you want to be a medic for Marines. So he's like, maybe just do the Army. And so sure enough, I went to the Army recruiter. I think I had just turned 18 because I was like one of those where you're just a little bit older. My birthday is in December. So my senior year, I was turning 18 already. And I had gone to them, took the test, told them I want to be a medic. They said I scored high enough. I went to my parents. I'm like, hey, I'm joining the Army to be a medic. And my mom and dad were like, thank God, because we didn't think you were going to be able to go to college. Like once you started doing that as a teenager, you kind of got a good, you were passionate about it, and you're probably not fit for college. So it went pretty well after that.
So I want to put this all together. The Civil Air Patrol, you being exposed to EMT at a young age are the two things that pretty much set your course for the trajectory of life that you've traveled so far. One thing I want to mention, the ELT that you mentioned, that's just for everyone to know, that's just a signal. Once an aircraft has a hard landing, it automatically goes off. It may not crash. Sometimes it may go off erroneously, but it sends out this universal signal to like a
radio signal that a radio can pick up.
It'll send out signals to not the FAA, but tower, those type of places, and we can identify where this aircraft is and go help people.
Yeah, and what we would do is we'd have a directional antenna on a receiver. We'd pick up that frequency, and we would literally just turn in a circle, and whichever direction you had the highest, literally the loudest frequency, you draw a line on a map, and you would drive 90 degrees from that, and you'd do it again, and then you would triangulate where this airplane was. It was pretty funny.
One thing I want to go back on, and I just gathered my thoughts, and I remember what I was going to say. It's amazing how your parents are teaching you all about service without even being in the military. And I think that's something a lot of people could learn from, because it takes a special person to serve other people, to put themselves on the back burner, not necessarily the back burner, but do what they have to do to take care of other people. And them teaching that was very, very, that was impressive as well. So you doing these EMT things, Civil Air Patrol, you sign up for the Army, you know immediately, like, I want to be in the shit, and this is the stuff I want to do, huh?
Yeah. So I enlisted in 2008, and I remember thinking, this sounds kind of dumb now maybe, but I remember thinking, like, I'm going to miss the war. Like, it's going to be too late. I'm going to miss it. And I remember thinking, I really want to go. And I think that most young men especially, and I'm sure young women also, but most young men want to kind of almost touch the fire. They want to sort of prove that I can do it. They want to know how they're going to react in certain situations. And so I think that's, as an 18-year-old, that's what I wanted. It's like, I want to come back and say, hey, I held my head up when not everyone did, or not everyone could have, or whatever.
So you joined the Army at 18.
Yep.
When you decided to join, how fast were you off the basic?
So I think I decided to join that summer, like in July or something, and I left for basic in September.
Where'd you do basic at?
Fort Benning. Yep. So I started basic training on September 11th, 2008. And so I remember them telling us, this day, whatever, 7 years ago, all those drill sergeants were in prior to 9/11. So they were giving us crap for being the new generation, basically.
What were you doing 9/11?
Well, I was homeschooled, so I was home. I remember, this is kind of silly, but we had taped the original Star Trek on VHS tapes. And we had, the night before, we had watched one of them, and one of the commercials that, you tape the TV show, there's a commercial, was like a Cessna crashing into a building. And it was like a news blurb, highlight. And it's, there's probably a taping from like 8 months or a year earlier or something. And so I'm asleep in my room because I was a kind of crappy student who didn't wake up when my mom wanted him to. And my older brother woke me up and he's like, Andrew, an airplane just crashed into a building. And I'm like, yeah, dude, we watched that episode yesterday. It's like, it's from wherever it goes, a Cessna, and he's like, no, an airplane crashed into the World Trade Center, into the Twin Towers. And I'm like, oh, that's not what was on that tape. And then we rolled out our little TV and we watched most of it unfold in our living room.
How'd your family respond to that?
I remember like praying quite a bit for the people involved and the people in the tower. I remember the next Sunday going to church and my dad pointing out that like there are flags everywhere, like everybody's uniting. And I seem to remember that we lived in Pennsylvania and there were people who had family that lived in the city that worked in the World Trade Centers. And I remember it becoming a kind of like our community's only one, zip code removed kind of thing from the World Trade Center. And so it was pretty palatable in the community that this was close to home. We weren't as close as some, you interviewed Rock and, he was like across the river from it, but I remember being like this was close to home geographically and kind of, emotionally.
And of your siblings or yourself, when that moment happened, did you think, I'm going to join the military and I want to go serve my country?
I don't think so. Not for me. I was probably like in 5th grade. And so I don't think I was quite there yet. And I mean, my older brother joined the Marine Corps. He's only 2 years older than me. I don't know if he had like a moment that was like the aha, like this is what I want or not.
Mm-hmm. So you get to basic. Culture shock?
To be completely honest, no. The things that we had done in that search and rescue team were harder than basic training. We were teenagers living in the woods, getting smoked, doing obstacle courses. It was a little bit of a shock just to being away. But I loved every bit of it. I naturally am somewhat of a decent runner, and that was a big part of what basic was hard about for a lot of people was running. And so that was pretty easy. And it was a lot of like, just be quiet, stand in line, do the things they tell you to do them how they tell you to do them, and you're going to be fine.
Did you like all that structure?
Oh yeah. I needed it. I needed a lot of it. And it was good.
With you coming from a close family, how much did homesickness play a part at basic and throughout your military career? Because you have spent a lot of time away from home. So how did you deal with that homesickness, and how much of a, not a negative impact did it have on you, but what type of impact did it have on you? Yeah,
it was hard. And so this is kind of maybe embarrassing to admit, but my oldest sister, when she went to college, she's like 6 years older than I am. And we, or at least I, like idolized her. Like she was awesome. Every time she played with us or we played, G.I. Joes or whatever, it was always like cooler and more fun because she was with us. And so when she went to college, like I was like emotional. I remember like crying as a kid that she was gone for college. And so anyway, fast forward to me leaving, like my baby sister, I think she took it pretty tough that I was gone because I was like the one with a car that take her places and that kind of stuff. But I wrote a lot of letters. I wrote a lot of letters home, and they wrote me letters, and that I think really was sort of how I dealt with it. And then even, not to jump forward, but even like my first deployment, we wrote a lot of letters. Just reading. My mom jokes that like my handwriting was still just as bad and my spelling is just as bad, in my basic training letters and stuff. But yeah, it was a shock, but I think I needed to sort of prove that like I'm growing up and doing my own thing now, and like it's okay that I've left the nest, so to speak.
Yeah, your parents are probably ecstatic about you leaving the nest. That's one thing. Me being a father now, you're a father as well. Getting our children ready to leave the nest is something that we as parents need to do, and we're happy to see it happen. Did your parents show up for basic graduation? Yeah, my dad, my brother, a couple of my brothers, and my sister and her husband, who is an Air Force NCO, they came down. So there's maybe like 4 or 5 of them. How many of your siblings served? So right now, my one of my older brothers did like maybe 8 years in the Marine Corps as an officer and got out and went to grad school. My oldest sister married a guy who spent 20 years in the Air Force. He's retired now. And then my youngest brother, Dominic, is an Army medic at Fort Bragg. Nice. So I guess that's, if you keep my brother-in-law, it's 4 of us. Nice. That's great. When you got done with basic, where'd you go next? So medics go to advanced individual training, medic training, basically at Fort Sam Houston, Texas. And so I got on a bus and went to Texas. The funny little story about that is that usually people get on a bus right after graduation and you're in your greens. You go straight to basic training or to AIT. And for whatever reason, we had like a 2-day pass between basic and basic training and AIT. And so I like went to Atlanta and I got a hotel room and then I got on the plane the next day. And so I show up in like jeans and a t-shirt
and everybody else shows up in Class A's. And so I immediately get screamed at by these drill sergeants. And I remember they made me go into this broom closet, literally like the janitor's closet, put my Class A's on and come back out into formation. So I was like, kind of missed the boat on that. I showed up in a cab instead of on the bus. It was just like, it's kind of a weird, who's this idiot kind of thing. But
no, you learn as you go. One thing about the Army, you have to learn a lot of shit on your own.
Yeah.
If there's not people out there, they'll will watch you stumble. I mean, they'll catch you eventually and they'll reel you back in. But like you said, they'll let you stumble a little bit, and then that little bit of humiliation the Army likes to put us through. How, with you already doing the EMT thing, how hard or easy was AIT for you?
Yeah. So when I went, you could. So I did EMT school in Pennsylvania and took the Pennsylvania state EMT exam. And so I was a EMT for the state, but I hadn't taken the national exam. But they had a program where you could take the national exam, and if you passed it, you could skip the first few weeks of basic training. So I took it and I bombed it. I failed it. And so they made me start from day one. But the first portion, I think that, it was really good because I was reinforcing things that like I had kind of learned, but maybe not as well solidified. And so I really enjoyed that I did that initial part of EMT school twice. And then the second portion of medic school is like the Army side, it's like tactical and combat medical stuff. And I loved it. It's like, it's what you joined the Army to do. You're in the dirt, you're carrying your equipment, you're, treating guys that are hurt. That part was really exciting.
Did you get any accolades in basic?
No, nope. I made it through.
When you did fail that test, did the drill sergeants or anybody give you a hard time? Like, how the hell did you become an EMT in Pennsylvania?
No, I remember I took it with another guy and he passed. And so, he would like classed up to like a company that was further along and I had to wait. And I sort of was fortunate that like there was another company about to start AIT. And so I just rolled into that company, but I don't remember anyone giving me a hard time.
How was your experience at AIT?
It was the first time that like, basic training, you have no control of almost anything. Mm-hmm. And AIT is when you start to have a little bit of freedom. You start to kind of, find a group of people that you sort of jive with, that you hang out with, because in basic you have almost no opportunity for that. And you see where some people make some choices that are, that get them in trouble individually. Whereas in basic, it's like everyone gets punished because one guy, overslept or whatever. Now in AIT, you start seeing that, oh, that guy missed this test or showed up late and he's being punished. Maybe we're all getting smoked a little bit, but that guy's getting kicked out or rolled back or whatever. So you start picking up on this, oh, my actions do matter and my, attention to duty or whatever, attention to detail is what will help me to succeed. And so you start kind of picking that up there, I think.
I think that's a time when you realize that the decisions and the actions that you take do affect other people as well. And you have to learn real quickly, like you said, like maybe I should not do that because it's going to punish everybody as well.
Yep.
At what point did you realize you were going to your first duty station? What was that duty station?
Yeah, so partway through, and I don't remember exactly when, you could volunteer for, a couple of different, you could volunteer for like airborne or whatever. And I had put down volunteered for airborne, and the drill sergeant the funny thing about AIT is I had failed my PT test. I ran like a max on the run, it was like 13 minutes or whatever. I had maxed the push-ups, but I failed the sit-ups by like 2 sit-ups. I just never was good at sit-ups. Mm-hmm. And so they made fun of me because I had the highest failing score. And so when I put down that I wanted airborne school, they were like, just cross his name out. Yeah. He's a retest for the PT test. And so I didn't get to volunteer for anything cool, but I found out that I was going to Fort Campbell, Kentucky as my first assignment. I knew nothing about it. I think I looked up online. I'm like, oh, it's the 101st. Like I remember watching movies and stuff about the 101st, so that'd be pretty cool. But I was mad that I wasn't getting airborne school out of AIT.
How old are you at the time?
I must have been 18, maybe turned 19 while I was there, something like that.
What was your rank?
I came in as a PFC because I'd done the Civil Air Patrol. There's a certain rank in the Civil Air Patrol that you can come in as an E3 or whatever. So I was an E3, graduate AIT and ship off to Fort Campbell, Kentucky.
How are you feeling?
On top of the world. Yeah, I was, I'm an Army combat medic. I even went and bought a bumper sticker that said combat medic, and in the middle of it was the combat medic badge, the CMB, and I put it on my, just as I arrived at Fort Campbell, I put it on my car, and because I was like, that's my title, is I'm a combat medic. And right off the rip, my senior medic took a X-Acto knife and cut the combat medic badge out of the middle of because that's an award, right? And like, I don't have that award at this time. I'm just have the title. So he cut the combat medic badge off of the thing. So it just said combat, there's a space, and it said medic. It was just sort of like the kind of little gotcha to.
For people that don't know, how do you get that award?
So you get the combat medic badge for being in direct, combat with the enemy and performing your duties as a medic. So in essence, you have to provide medical care while being engaged by the enemy. And initially, you had to be in an infantry brigade, infantry brigade or smaller, assigned to the unit, in the vicinity to be harmed by the enemy, engaged, and perform your duties. And later they opened it, or they took away the only infantry brigades, because initially flight medics couldn't get them, engineer medics couldn't get them. You had to be assigned to an infantry brigade specifically.
It's crazy how God sets your life up, because that senior medic cut that out, not realizing the things that you were about to take, do in life, and just the course Andrew 6 was about to take. And I really believe that we speak things into existence, or if you thought it, it's already going to happen in life. I believe those things, right?
Okay.
So you knew something about you, if you did it, by accident or what, but you spoke that one thing into existence, and we're going to get to that in a little bit. Who were you assigned with, your first duty station?
Yeah, so I reported Fort Campbell, and I was signed into the 2nd Battalion of the 502nd Infantry, so 2502, which was a battalion in 2nd Brigade Combat Team of the 101st.
What was their nickname? Strike.
Strike.
All right, Strike. Do you remember who the brigade colonel was at that time?
Yeah, so the brigade commander was Colonel Kandarian. I think his first name was like Art Kandarian. And the brigade sergeant major was Sergeant Major Schroeder, who ended up being like the Force Com sergeant major later. And that was, the Black Hearts was our symbol, which I think one of your guests had misspoken that it was 1st Brigade of the 101st that was in southern Afghanistan in 2010. Unfortunately, it was not. It was 2nd Brigade of the 101st.
2nd Brigade. And they're a pretty renowned brigade, aren't they?
Yeah, I think my compatriots in 3rd Brigade Combat Team of the 101st will probably hate me, but there's a it's funny how in a unit as small as the 101st, each brigade has its own kind of personality, and each brigade sort of hates the other ones. and I remember when I got there, getting the little brief from the guys that were there, and they were saying, hey, this area of Fort Campbell, this is Rakkasan land, right? That's 3rd Brigade Combat Team, and you don't go there unless you want to fight. And I was like, that seems really crazy to me, but legitimately they said, don't go to that, like shop at like that gas station, don't go there, like that's not our area. And the same as they don't come to ours. And there had been these stories of earlier where full on fights of just because you're in one unit and I'm that we're like our own little clans or cliques or something. I don't know, it's just but yeah, we
very prideful brigades, man. It's crazy because they feel that way, but when push came to shove, outside of Fort Campbell in a combat unit, we'd all help each other, and that's something. It's just the brotherly thing.
Yeah,
you know how it is.
I think it's a lot like the brother thing. It's like, I will beat the crap out of you here in our yard or our house, but as soon as we go out there, like someone talks smack to you, and we're both gonna be on them.
Correct. So you show up, brand new PFC. It's 2nd Brigade, right?
2nd Brigade.
2nd Brigade. Strike. What was that like?
It was kind of wild. And so I show up, and right away, the medics all belong to one platoon in the headquarters company, the medic platoon. And so I'm meeting a couple of those guys, and they had recently been back from an Iraq deployment. I want to say they were there like 8 into 9, and this is now, or maybe 7 into 8, and this is now early 2009, like March of 2009, something like that. And I meet the first sergeant, and he's like this, crusty, a star on his CIB type thing. First sergeant who's, first thing he asked me is like, how old are you, private? And I'm like, I'm, 19 or whatever. And he said, when you were born, I was like clearing trenches in this place or that, and I was just like, oh crap, like this is the real deal, right? These guys have been fighting this war, and some of these guys have been fighting wars before this. And so in an infantry battalion, there's medics that belong to the headquarters company. They stay and they run the clinic and they run the evac section. And then there's medics that get sort of like farmed out to the infantry battalions. And very quickly you realize that the ones that get farmed out to the infantry battalions, that's the job you want. Mm-hmm. Those are like, we call them line medics. And every medic is fighting for a slot to be a line medic because no one wants to be like in the rear with the gear kind of thing. You want to be out, like you join the Army to be a line medic essentially. And so quickly there becomes sort of like a trial, and there's like the more senior guys. Each of those line companies has a senior medic, and those guys are vetting the new recruits. Who's the right one to come to my company? And how are we going to test them? And so we would get, we'd get smoked by the seniors, and they'd blindfold us and they'd say, hey, open your aid bag and find me a syringe of this size or whatever. And you'd be digging in your aid bag blindfolded trying to find it. And then they'd make you lunge around the building and start an IV. And like, it was an interview for, the line companies from day one. And
did you know immediately you wanted to be, as soon as you got to Campbell, you met that first sergeant, you saw, his, pedigree, and were you like, man, I got to get to this line unit ASAP, and I'm gonna do whatever it takes to get there?
Yeah. Because quickly you see that like those guys, sort of walk around with a little bit on their shoulder, like being a medic is all about supporting the warfighter, right? Like everything that we do is for the guy on the ground, and I mean, and as we talk about this, it'll go into being a flight medic, but when you're there and not to say that being in the aid station isn't also supporting those guys, but supporting them as a line medic is just supporting them closer to where their injury is, right? It's the beginning of the support. And so it's like right off the rip, it's like, that's what I want to do. And so I'm going to endure all of this kind of hazing and selection and whatever, and prove myself. Every time we'd go on PT, one of those senior medics would come up behind you and say something like, you better not lose this run. You better not let anyone pass you. And so it's like every day was a run faster, know your equipment better. We had stupid little, hey, every day your inspectable items are this, this, and this, don't let me catch you without them. And you'd have a Ziploc bag with 2 pens and a pencil and a dry erase marker, or, whatever it was. And you did that every single day because you weren't going to let them cut you off the sort of selection to be a line medic.
How long was that process before you did get selected?
I don't really remember. We must have reported in March, and it maybe it was in the summer, early in the summer, that I was assigned to Bravo Company, one of the line companies. And initially there were no other line medics in that company. It was just the senior medic and me. And so I covered all the 3 line platoons. And so each of those platoons would go do training, and I was the only medic. So I was doing all of it. And then quickly, not much longer after that, we got 2 more line medics. And so then I had just 2nd Platoon, Bravo Company, 2nd Battalion. When
did you realize you guys were getting deployed again?
I think we knew we were going to be going to Afghanistan I think initially the orders were for Iraq. And so this is middle of 2009. Iraq is sort of now kind of closing down, or it's dwindling down. And so somewhere in that time, we switch and we say, hey, we know we're going to Afghanistan. We're going to go to Afghanistan. And then we start the sort of train up, JRTC and all that kind of stuff. And so we go to JRTC probably in the spring, and then Afghanistan June.
So June 2010. June 2010.
Yep.
One thing I want to add to is you said your job was to support the warfighter. I think that's everybody's job outside of infantry, combat arms. That's all we do, even as aviation.
Yeah.
And we'll talk about that again later on, that our only purpose is to support the ground guys, because they're the ones on the ground.
Yeah.
They're the ones that are really making the progress and doing the things that need to be done. But every job is important in the Army, like you said, right? From the aid station to the cook supply, that big machine is really focused on that warfighter, so we could do our job as they could do their job. So you get there, you get to your First off, how are you feeling about?
Well, and let me just say, like, that I think that sentiment will come out a little bit later in my story that there is this feeling that the closer you are to the warfighter, the more important you are. And I think that is somewhat necessary because you're asking those guys to do some pretty incredible things and dangerous things, but it also can be kind of destructive if you say that the only people here that matter are those guys, right? And so it takes the whole team, right? I mean, if you don't have fuel for your vehicles, you ain't going nowhere, right? If you don't got food, or whatever it is, so quickly if you take one time removed, you could see where each job is necessary, right? Hey, we're as a aviation, you're 15 Papa and 25 uniform in a medevac platoon, right? They're just as important for different reasons. But if no one wakes you up to go on a 9-line, you ain't going on a 9-line. You know what I mean? And so that's kind of that wasn't clear to me at this time. At this time, it's like I want to be as close as I can. We're the thing that matters. Those other guys can kind of get over it. But as I grow up and mature, you sort of see why more people are necessary and
and
everybody's
especially
important.
now that at your rank, you're starting to see that, and that's a lesson I learned. Now that I think about it, I learned this in Iraq in 2003. I was a specialist, and they sent me on KP duty.
Yeah,
and it made me realize that there's so much going on to make this big machine work. If we just remove one piece of this puzzle, it could collapse the whole puzzle.
Yeah.
And like you said, the closer we are to the battlefield, we forget those things because our sense of urgency is different from the person back there. But we still need that person back there because if we're not getting paid, if we're not eating, if we're not getting whatever it is, right, the ammo, especially the water, our life is going to be more complicated. And I'm happy you brought that up, Six, because I think a lot of people need to know that.
Yeah.
That everybody in this big machine that we call the Army is important.
Yeah, and it's sort of a two-way street, right? I mean, the warfighter needs to know that they're the tip of the spear of what the Army's mission is, right? And they can't forget, though, who's supporting them and who got them there. And the support personnel that's helping them get there can't think I'm the main show and everyone's here for me, but they also can't forget that you're an important. Does that make sense? There's two sides of this that you really got to. And if you take 1 second to have a brain, a sort of mental game and think about it, you really start picking up on, support is an easy one, right? And logistics and delivering food, water, ammo, removing waste, the poop ponds in Afghanistan, those types of things, those quickly pile up and those things won't, the warfighter can't continue its mission if we don't do those things. So it really is it's a two-way street. Yeah.
Agree with you 100%. You show up to Afghanistan, you're 20 years old now?
Yeah, 20 years old.
Specialist?
E3.
Still at E3?
E3.
You're in Afghanistan. How'd your parents feel about you going to combat for the first time?
Well, let me back up a tiny bit, right? So the other important thing there is that, on a random Friday with a buddy, and we're trying to go in Tennessee, Fort Campbell to the Riverwalk for like an event, and we get lost and we stop at Sonic, the drive-in restaurant, and I meet this girl who's a car hop who delivers food to the car, Well, fast forward, we've been married 16 years, and I married that girl. But I married her, we were going to try to get married later, and then when we realized how quickly the deployment was coming, we got married that winter. And so I married Megan, and then shortly thereafter we deploy.
So you married Megan before you deployed?
Before I deployed, yep.
And you guys been together ever since?
Yeah.
Man, I love it.
I'm at the time, I guess I had just turned 20, and she had just turned 19, or she was 19 and a half. She turned 20 shortly thereafter. And so as you're saying, how does your parents feel about you going to war? Well, I don't know how my parents felt about me getting married, to be honest, because they were supportive. And then much later, my mom, many years later, my mom was like, we were kind of worried and concerned about it. I'm like, Mom, why didn't you tell me that? She's like, well, you got to learn it on your own,
That's something to add on to your parents, just letting you learn. And I think that's one of the biggest things that's so important about being a parent. Even though you may know what's best for your child, sometimes they just have to learn on their own.
Yep.
And I'm happy that it seems like your parents are very, let him stumble. He'll figure it out. Because I'm that type of dad too, especially on my sons. I'm going to step back. I'm going to let you stumble till you almost fall off that cliff. Then I'm going to grab you.
Yeah.
Right?
Well, I'm the middle one, so maybe they did it differently from my older siblings.
and the younger ones as well.
Yeah.
So you got a lot going on right now. You meet Megan. Y'all get married.
Yep.
What, 6 months later, you're in Afghanistan?
we got married December or January, and we deployed June 6th, which is also a unique day for the 101st, right? Because that's D-Day. So we deployed June 6th. So we had been married like 5 months, and somewhere in there we went to JRTC for a month.
So we were
newlyweds.
Yeah, you probably saw your wife maybe 3 months, and now you're off to Afghanistan. How was Megan feeling?
She was pretty nervous. And she had like promised her parents she was never going to marry a soldier. Being from Fort Campbell area, from Clarksville, they probably only know the horror stories of the soldiers and stuff. And so, but for some reason, we were the right people, and it is what that. So, yeah, she was pretty nervous about it. And as the story develops, we'll talk more about, I think, the deployments and stuff like that. But back to the earlier, like, we wrote a lot of letters to each other. And on that deployment, internet and phone service we had it, but it was kind of it was spotty. And anytime that there was an injury or a death, they'd lock the one little building with the only phone and the only internet. And so it was so inconsistent that we could communicate with each other. So we just ended up writing letters. So, Megan somewhere has a stack of these letters that I wrote her that are terrible handwriting, terrible spelling, of just, sometimes they were, a week or two of just my thoughts and what were going on, each day writing a little bit or whatever. And she had given me all these we had taken photos before we deployed, and she wrote on the back of these little photos, little encouraging things or whatever. And, one of them 16 years later is on my visor in my truck. We were looking at it yesterday. She was like, holy cow, I look like a kid,
Well, she was a kid.
Yeah, we were kids.
Both of you guys were kids. It's crazy that time flies, and I'm glad you guys are still together, because she's been through literally everything with you through this whole time. And once again, this is my testament to everybody out there. If you don't think your partner matters, it is night and day. Andrew just talked about it. You hear about all the horror stories around any military base about marrying the local girl and whatever happens. But we never hear about the good things. There's a lot of good things that are happening as well. There's a lot of marriages that stay together. I mean, your marriage stayed together. Your wife stayed with you. You're still in the military. All these deployments. And we're going to talk about it. I know there's things that she didn't even know happened to you. And they just came out late. She's finding out later, but we'll get to those.
Well, and some of it too is like, I've been blessed and fortunate that we were at Fort Campbell for so long that her family was here. And so on my deployments, a lot of guys struggle with their family back and support and the kids and all that. And, but she had her mom or her dad or her siblings, friends in college or whatever. And so really that through multiple deployments that I did at Fort Campbell, that really, really helped also.
That is
and
huge.
So that can be a risk up. if you are married young and uproot them and move to some military base. Your spouse now is at Kansas or whatever with nobody, and you're from someplace else. So we were kind of blessed and fortunate that we stayed here and that we deployed out of here where she had the support system.
Me knowing you and everything you've been through, God really loves you, man. You are covered by God. I mean,
thank you.
And everybody's going to see once you hear more of Andrew's story. But so you get to Afghanistan. What was your initial reaction? Because I remember when I first got off that plane in Bagram in 2008, and I was just thinking like, holy shit, this is just a whole different side of the world, which it is. But what was your initial take when you got there? And where'd you go, by the way?
So we went to Kandahar. 2010. It's actually, a bunch of your guests that were in 6101, they supported us. So it's that same year. And I remember getting there and, being somewhat overwhelmed. Like Kandahar was so big with so many people. I remember walking from the transient billets. The first thing you smell in the morning is the poo pond, and just being like grossed out by that. And you walk into the chow hall and just hordes, for lack of a better word, of just soldiers and strikers and MRAPs and just people everywhere, just weapons on their back. And I just remember being like, this is the real deal. This is a war zone. There's a lot of people here with a single kind of purpose. And then the next thing I remember is going to the boardwalk, and we had our squad, and my squad leader made, the squad had to go together. You couldn't go to chow without your entire squad. So one guy's carrying a 240, one guy's carrying a saw, and I remember going to the boardwalk and seeing these like other people in the military, but they're like in PTs and they're like on a date. They're like holding hands, like having coffee. And so it was like a very like stark difference of like, here's a striker driving by me and all that moon dust getting blown up in the air, and you're like, oh yeah, this is the real deal. To then like you turn a corner and there's like a little restaurant and a coffee shop and there's some people and you're just like, is this a college campus? Like what? Like it was kind of confusing and conflicting in a lot of ways.
One thing I noticed with me, my experience was that environment did build a little bit of resentment in the nature of, man, there's some guys really going through the shit. And then you got other people over here just chilling, and their biggest gripe is we don't have Wi-Fi today.
Yeah. We used to joke the coffee at the green beans is out, or the ice at the green beans is out.
Correct. So I'll never forget. I went in 2008. I had to go home on emergency leave. My mom got ill, and I'm literally leaving Afghanistan, flying missions every day. I get to Qatar. There's an Air Force base, and these guys are literally, like you just said, PTs looking clean. Yep. I'm walking in there dingy, dirty flight suit, looking just stressed out as hell. They're just happy drinking every day. I said, well, do these guys know there's a war going on?
Yeah, we're not in the same place.
But it's what we talked about earlier, right? Everybody's part, it may be different, but it's still important. So you experienced that. Where did you stay on Kandahar the whole time, or did you go to, where'd you go?
So in 2010, Strike owned sort of west of Kandahar in along part of the Arghandab. And so there was the entire brigade had this AO out there. And it was from, Fob Wilson, if you remember that. That was turned into Passab later. That was the brigade Fob, right on Highway 1, sort of all west of Kandahar, and not quite as far west as the Marines over in the Helmand. So we had kind of that middle between the Helmand and Kandahar city, that middle area. And the brigade's main mission was to hold this area of Highway 1, and then we were going to continuously and segmentedly push further south. We were going to move further south and build some smaller bases and sort of set a foothold, and then we were going to move further south and so on. And so for the predominance of that year, that's what we did. And so we were sort of like nomads. We never really lived anywhere very long. We would go back to Housi Madad, which was my battalion's, 2nd Battalion's FOB. We'd refit. We didn't even have a permanent billeting. There was like one tent that 2 platoons would swap. So my platoon would have it when another platoon was out, and when we came back, they'd go out. We would take their cots, take their AC, and then we would do the same. And then throughout that, we would own some smaller patrol bases out in sector that we would basically just occupy for 30 days or so, go back to the main FOB, refit, that kind of thing. And we played a lot of like leapfrog, so to speak.
This was prime time with kinetic activity and you guys trying to eliminate the enemy out there. This was a pretty bad time.
Yeah,
right?
I tell people it's like this time, in my opinion, this is where I grow up and become a man, so to speak. This is pretty serious amount of offensive operations that the 101st is trying to do and pushing further south. This is the area that historically has always been owned by the Taliban. Some of these smaller locations, and we can talk about some of the specifics, but this is sort of where the Taliban was born. There was a series of mosques or a village where Mullah Omar lived. And he would go meet in Kandahar city, and then he would kind of from this area. So this is like his hometown, his home turf. And we took all of that. Yeah. And so I remember taking the village that he was from and just finding IEDs everywhere. IEDs, ammo and bandoliers of ammo staged in things, IEDs in trees and under culverts. And it was just like densely infested with IED area, more so than other areas. And so, I'm in one infantry platoon, something like 40 guys, a lieutenant that's, 25 or 26 years old, and an old E7 platoon sergeant that's like 34 or something. And me and my 40 closest friends. And we just lived and fought in the Zari Panjwai and the Arghandab River Valley for that summer.
How often were you guys getting in firefights? And just so everyone knows, you're a medic. You technically... Did you carry? Yeah,
so in the Army, medics carry weapons. We carry a rifle the same as everybody else. And way back in the day when medics were like non-combatants, that's not really the case anymore, right? You're fighting until there's a casualty, and then you're either fighting to protect the casualty or you're fighting and treating a casualty. And I don't remember how many, or it was pretty often. Pretty often we were in firefights. Pretty often they were small. A lot of the time, there'd be something like one of our missions was we would destroy the cash crop, which is basically poppy or opium and marijuana. And this was a little bit later on in the deployment. We would just go out where special operations or whoever had found a sort of cache of these drugs, and we would go burn them. Well, these are expensive drugs. There's a lot of money here, and we would get attacked quite often doing that. But it would be, a firefight, exchange some rounds. Our guys were aggressive and would shoot probably more than they needed to, and then a helicopter would come and support us, and those people would generally flee. A lot of firefights kind of went that way. Throughout this port of the Zari-Panjwai, a lot of IEDs, a lot of dismounted IEDs, a lot of mounted IEDs. For the summer of 2010, it seemed like constantly there was someone in our brigade getting blown up. We started kind of nicknaming this zone as the land of no legs, which is not a very funny joke, but we have a dark sense of humor.
We have a dark sense of humor.
And the Taliban knew what we would do, and they knew how to bait us into dismounted patrols into areas that they would have planned for us. And one of them was like that part has a lot of grape fields, and a grape field is imagine like a 3-foot mud wall that's like a little terrace, like there's like a stepping stone mud walls. And so they'd plant grapes along one of the mud walls, and the vine would grow and fall over the other side of the mud wall. But those are 3 or 4 feet tall, and so walking across them is, you're stepping over a 3-foot wall every 3 feet, basically. And so you can't really navigate that, not with a machine gun and gear and all that. And on the sides were paths that the farmers would use. And so that's the path that the enemy would use when they would shoot at you, and they'd shoot an RPG, some machine gun fire, they'd run down those paths. And at the edge of the farmer's field is a big 10-foot wall, and there's an opening in that pathway. And so the person you're chasing would either jump over it, or there would sometimes be like a little cat hole on the side that they would scurry under, because right in the middle of that opening, that sort of choke point, would be a pressure plate IED. And as the U.S. would chase this guy, someone would step on that IED and set it off. And that happened quite a bit throughout the 2nd Brigade AOR.
Let me add some. So for everyone listening, if you go back and listen to a lot of the flight medics talking about Afghanistan 2010, they talked about a lot of the IEDs going in, POIs, point of injury. And now Andrew, as he becomes a flight medic later, but he's currently on the ground. He's a combat medic on the ground with these infantry units. So how often did you have your interaction with flight medics, if at any at this time?
Let's see. So earlier on, my platoon was pretty fortunate. We had been in a number of significant firefights, and we had the first casualties I had was an ambush on our patrol base, but we were only like maybe 2 or 3 miles from the FOB. And so, RPGs hit this guard tower, and these guys are injured, and none of them were really life threatening. And so we drove them all back to the FOB, and I drove them back to the aid station and gave them to the PA. And actually, the first casualty of our platoon was we were tasked with doing overwatch of the highway, and we had to do it 24/7 around the clock. And so we're typically a dismounted infantry platoon, and now we're in vehicles, which we're a little bit uncomfortable with, but it's fine. We drive out, and all day and all night we would watch this section of the road. And an infantry platoon is able to kind of fragment into smaller sections, into squads. And so one squad would have a platoon leader, and he'd go out and he would take the RTO, the radio operator, with him, and that would kind of be the team. And then there would be another group that would be the night crew with the platoon sergeant, and they would take the forward observer, who's basically a radio operator. But there's only one medic. So I would go for the day crew, and I'd go with the night crew. And after like 2 or 3 days, I just can't sustain this. Yeah. I'm just exhausted.
Correct.
And I remember my platoon sergeant say, all right, hey, the PL's going to go out. And I believe he went out for the night portion. And he's like, we're going to go out in the day, but you stay back, rest with us, The night portion actually was safer because it's more obvious when you see people moving, with a flashlight through your thermals and NVGs. That's super obvious. You can see that. Whereas during the day, there's just people mulling around, and it's a little bit more, could become more kinetic. Mm-hmm. And so I stayed back and slept in the tent while they were out. Well, while they came back, they ran over an IED, and the platoon leader's truck got blown up. A guy got ejected, and a guy broke his femur. And fortunately, they all ended up being okay. The guy with the femur got medevaced, and the other guys stayed in country. They were banged up, mm-hmm. but they were okay. And that really hit me in a weird way, because here's my platoon, my 40 guys, and this group is out there and they have no medic with them because I'm too tired to go with them. And that I kind of decided, like, that's never going to happen again. Mm-hmm. I'm just going to go on every mission, and we're going to make it work. And so that's what we did. I went on every patrol, the rest of the deployment. Even in some of our patrol bases, we would do these air assaults. We would fly the whole company, further into the Arghandab, further deeper into bad guy land, and we would take over a local house. We would just show up. A lot of the Afghan houses are like a mud, couple of little rooms with like a courtyard mm-hmm. around it. And we'd find a good looking one, and we'd pay the family to leave, and we'd blow some small holes in the walls, put machine guns in the corners. We'd bed down the platoon, and we would live out of that house for a few days. And generally we would wait until a convoy could basically make its way down to us. And then the engineers would start building a permanent, little base there with like dirt walls and guard towers. And then a unit would come fill it, and we'd go back to the FOB and we'd do it again. Okay. And so we were like, that was the leapfrogging we would do.
How did you sustain operations for yourself? Because lack of sleep is very detrimental. I mean, it degrades your cognitive thinking, your response time, everything. I tell everyone, lack of sleep is very comparable to being drunk.
Oh, yeah. Yep.
And the difference is when your body gets so tired, it will just shut down on you. So how did you keep going?
I think I was very fortunate to have a good platoon sergeant and platoon leader. They knew that. They knew they only had one medic. They knew that I was one of the limiting factors. And so whenever possible, like I wouldn't pull guard, or I wouldn't do some of these other duties, because I would just be sleeping and resting. Hey, we get into this house and hey, we're doing a night patrol tonight. It's like, medic, go get some sleep, go rest. Some of the other guys will switch off pulling guard or doing whatever, but like medic, go to sleep. And sometimes it was usually the Fort observer, because he's also he's an end of one. There's only one Fort observer. So like me and him would go bed out. Sometimes it cause some conflict. There's two privates sleeping while everyone else is working. But most of the guys quickly realized that there's only one of me. And so they took care of me, to be honest.
How did that feel, being the only one? Were you ever overwhelmed?
Yeah. Initially it was pretty exciting. Mm-hmm. And it's also kind of funny because maybe my personality or my experience, I wanted to do everything. I wanted to I'm not going to get taken out of the fight and whatever. And so having them sort of force me to was a little bit of a brain, like it messed with me a little bit. Right. I remember packing up for one of the air assaults, and we're packing our rucks, and we're going to be out for, we think, 10 days. So food, water, change of clothes, your whoopee, and I got to put my aid bag on top of it. And we're packing up, and I remember my squad leader coming in, the weapons squad leader, because he owns the medic, and he's saying, hey, everyone has to carry, one extra mortar round, 200 rounds of Link 7.62 for the machine gun, 2 bricks of C4. Everyone's got to carry all this, and 2 ASIP batteries. That's like another 10 pounds, maybe a little bit more. And I remember him coming over to me and going, except the medic, like you already have 20 pounds of an aid bag. You're going to be carrying extra fluid and IVs and stuff like that. And so I remember them cross-loading, the ammo that I would carry as another member to the other guys, because I had to carry medical equipment. And so I remember that kind of hitting me kind of weird, that I am different. I have a different role. I'm carrying different things. And the guys here, could resent me for it, but they don't. They totally, they're coming over to me like, hey, can I carry an extra IV bag for you? Like, can I carry some extra equipment for you? I think they kind of know that there's only one medic. And then I would often carry a camera for the platoon. And one of our jobs was we had to photograph every military age Afghan male that we came across. And we had this system that would record a picture of their eye and their fingerprints, and you'd put in their demographics, and it would save it into a database. And this would log everybody that you encountered. And so supposedly, or theoretically, if another unit met this guy and this guy's linked to some sort of IED or something like that, it would tell you on this camera system when you took the picture of their iris, it would say, hey, this person's a red. It's like detain on site, or this person's don't allow access to military facilities, but don't detain. And it kind of was like a bolo, like a police kind of thing. And I would do that. I would carry that camera and I would do all the military age males that we encountered. And I remember one day, we got in a firefight. We're in Afghanistan, get in a firefight, and we've cleared this building. And recently there had been like another platoon that got blown up by an IED in a house. And so we're going to clear this house. And my squad leader takes out it's called a gizmo, this like metal detector basically. And I remember it's right by my feet because we have to set the batteries in it, and it has to sort of sink to the ground, and it's going off. And we're like, what the heck? This thing is so crappy. It's going off, and it's still going off. And the Afghan commander comes over to me and he just pushes the dirt by my foot, and there's a corner of a pressure plate, like, a couple inches from my boot. That's why the gizmo is going off, is it's sensing an IED right next to us.
Trust your equipment.
And I remember being like, oh, that's not good. And it's this, wooden pressure plate wrapped in basically a brown packing tape. And it's like, that's what every IED looks like. And I remember my squad leader saying, like, Six, go the fuck over there. And I'm like, no, sorry, I can help out. And he's like, go over there. And so I go over there, and he comes over and he goes, listen, dude, stop being in the front of the platoon, right? If you get blown up, we're screwed. There's no other medics. Yeah. If one of us gets blown up, your job is to come fix them. That's okay. But if you get blown up, we're screwed. And I remember that, like, that was the other thing that kind of really hit me hard, of like, oh, it's not about just doing the thing and showing up. It's like, we have different roles here.
Correct.
And the medic's role is not to be a burden to the platoon, but it's also it's sort of like the insurance policy. You're part of the life support of the platoon. And so don't put yourself in a position where one accident endangers the entire platoon.
Yeah. That's a hard lesson to learn, but I think you're learning a lot of valuable life lessons there.
Yeah.
Well,
and this is 15 years of thinking about some of these lessons.
Well, that's the greatest thing about life, right? As we go through things, we learn from those experiences. And as the older we get, we look back and say, you know what? I actually learned this back then. Yeah. And this is what I really took away from it.
Yep. And it hasn't stuck with me until this moment that I've really put the whole thing together.
But you learned a valuable lesson and I think a lot of people need to understand this. As much as we all want to be in the fight, we want to do that to, that bravado and wanting to feel special and all these other things. We have to remember our importance of our position on the team.
Right.
It's crazy, but as we get older, we start realizing these things. Just do what you got to do, and the rest of the team will work just fine. Once you start trying to step out those bounds, that's when things get real blurry.
Yeah, and it comes down to, I think, trusting the team, right? It's almost like if you were playing like soccer and the goalie is like, you know what, I want to go shoot the goals because like I'm a good person on this team, and he runs away from the goal. It's like, well, now you've left the goal undefended, right? Correct. And so it's like you do have to trust that they're going to do their job and that you are going to do your job. And trust goes both ways. They have to defend. They have to trust that when someone comes and attacks the goal, you're going to defend it.
Correct. Let's talk about that day that Rock was talking about.
Yeah.
I want to get on. I want to talk about that.
So, so I told you how we would live in these houses, these Afghan houses, just us and our Afghan platoon. And
how was it working with the Afghanis?
It was interesting. And we lived with these dudes. We lived, ate, slept, all, small platoon, 40 guys, 20 or 30 Afghans, barely can understand each other. But we got a pretty good relationship with them. And
did you guys get close to them?
Yeah, as close as you can be with like a language barrier. Yeah. There's only one interpreter. But you'd play soccer with them, or you'd do some training with them. We got in some firefights with them, and quickly they kind of became better at what they did. The first patrols we went on, they'd take their helmets off, they'd pick grapes off the grapevines, sit down, do nothing. And so quickly that got better. I remember my platoon leader, his name is Castle. It's funny how a lot of the leaders in my lives that are officers have K's as the first name. But he was like a boxer at West Point, and he's just like big tower of a guy. And the Afghans had this guy that they thought was a boxer. So our platoon and the Afghans, like a lot of times there was boxing going on. Mm-hmm. People were getting their bells rung, getting punched around. I had to tell them, like, we might be causing some more TBIs than we need to. We keep punching each other. But yeah, I mean, you build some trust with them, you build some confidence. They see you do your job well, and that gives them some confidence.
Yeah.
And then they want to do their job well.
Yeah.
And when they do, they come to you and they're like, look, Mr. Like, sir, like I did the what, and you're like, oh, good job. You know, and so there's some mutual respect that has to be earned.
Excellence breeds excellence, man.
Yeah, 100%.
It's a real thing. You're either gonna move up to the excellent level, or you're gonna take yourself out completely, like remove yourself from being around excellent people.
Yeah.
And that's one of the greatest things about it.
And for me, it was like a couple of times some Afghans would get hurt, and I would take care of them, and I would take care of them with the same urgency as I would the Americans. And that, I think, at least from my perspective, built a lot of trust with us also. They would call me doctor. They'd say, doctor, and they'd come over to me, and the guy would have like a hangnail or whatever. And I'm like, all right, man, go away, you know.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, we built some good trust with them, I think. And one day we were in a firefight, and the Afghan platoon sergeant wasn't there. He was like at the battalion. And that dude ran out of the meeting, got in his truck, his Humvee, hauled ass down this road. And I remember this open field in front of us. We're behind a wall, you know, and we're engaging where the enemy is. And this Afghan Humvee comes hauling ass through the middle of the field that is in front of us. And he does like a donut. And I remember him just jumping out of it. And it may be somewhat foggy that he slowed down, but I remember him jumping out, running to us. He jumps over the wall that we're all behind. And he looks over at my platoon leader named Castle, and he goes, Castle, I am here. And we're all just like, what the heck? But it's just like that's the kind of thing that like that doesn't happen on day one. That happens over time that you build with them, and you build some trust with them.
So you're telling me about the...
Yeah, so we live in this house, and the base is called Sangsar, which is the home of the Taliban. And so this is an important sort of location for the enemy. And we own this house, and they're building a patrol base next to us. And it's just starting. They're, you remember those HESCO walls, those like big dirt-filled walls? So they're putting those up, but we live in this house, and it's just my platoon. And
how many guys?
I want to say something like about 25 guys and some Afghans. Mm-hmm. And we live in these rooms of this mud hut. And in the courtyard, there's a couple of pup tents. And so some of our platoon lives out there. And we have a couple machine gun positions set up on the roof, a couple in the corners. And there's like a road along one side of us. And we have like concertina wire out. We have claymores out. And, you know, we're pretty safe. And we have been attacked there a lot. This is where this dude drove up his Humvee. This is that location. And so we would do a lot of presence patrols. We would go patrol in the local villages to, you know, see what's going on. And all those people know who the Taliban are. And a lot of them don't like the Taliban. And so we're trying to kind of build goodwill with them, get some intel from them, and you know, tell them that the Americans aren't the bad guys. Like, we're here to help them. And so basically, you know, we bed down one night, and I remember I have guard duty that night. And so I'm on the roof of the building with a machine gun. And we're just, you know, the couple of privates up here, we're just shooting the shit and talking. And I remember one kid had just come back from leave, and he's telling me about his kids that he saw on leave and whatnot. And it must have been something similar to what I was telling you, where like I must have had a shorter guard shift, because I went to bed, and the next thing I know, I wake up with this humongous, loud, and like viscerally like deep explosion. And I remember it like taking my breath away. And I remember feeling the roof fall in, and I remember it hitting me. And so these buildings are made of basically mud, but it's mud dried in the sun, and it's, you know, the walls are, you know, a foot thick or thicker, and the roof is the same way. I mean, we have 3 soldiers on the roof with machine guns, sandbags in a machine gun position. That's how sturdy the roof is, and all of that is falling in. And so I'm in my whoopee, right, my like a little blanket, and I am starting to get buried by the roof as it's collapsing.
You're conscious when all this is going on.
At some point, I remember hearing or maybe really feeling the blast, and I remember the roof falling in. And the next thing I remember is seeing the sky. The roof's gone, and I can see the sky. And it's already been daybreak, so it's, you know, it's light out, and I can't move basically from my arms down. Like, I'm just trapped in whatever the weight is of the roof on top of me. And
how did you not panic? Because a lot of people,
it was too fast, I think. Okay. I mean, this is like blast, all this debris is falling. I can feel it. It's heavy on top of me. I see this guy. I'm like, I got to get the fuck out of here. And so I start just kind of like shimmying myself out of my whoopee, and I get out. I mean, it doesn't seem to be all of that much on top of me or whatever. And so I get myself out, and one of the machine gunners.
When you say out, are you like out in the open and the whole building is crumbled? Are you still inside?
There's still walls around me. Just the roof came in.
Okay.
And there's dust and dirt everywhere. It's very hard to see anything. I can see the sky, and I can see kind of like the wall, an edge of the wall. I can see the sky through. So the ceiling came in, or the roof rather, and like a corner-ish of the wall. And I'm in this, there's two rooms. I'm in like the further forward room. There's a room behind me that's against the outside wall of the building. I don't know if I'm describing this very well, but
sound-wise, what are you hearing? Is there any more other explosions, small
I don't
alarms?
remember. There's not small alarms. I don't remember hearing anything other than that.
Just that eerie silence after some shit happens.
Yeah.
Okay.
Or I may have had a hard time here. Hearing is not something that I remember much of. And the machine gunner next to me, he's sitting up also. As I'm getting out of the debris, he's doing the same thing. And we kind of like lock eyes, and we're like, what the fuck just happened? And there's another guy between us, and he's either asleep or unconscious. And what I remember is seeing him sit up, and part of the roof hit him in the head, and he sort of slumped over.
Damn.
And so the machine gunner and I, Thomas and I, we both get out of the debris, and somehow we realize that my platoon leader is in this room with us. And where he slept, the whole wall and ceiling is just like a big wall of debris. It's just complete, like we can't see him. He's buried under this thing. And I don't really know how we knew he was in there or not. But we both just kind of climb over the debris to this corner and start digging through the debris of, just clumps of mud and dirt, dried mud and dirt that, are heavy, big. And we're yelling his name, Castle, and we're digging through this pile. And I don't really know how long it took, but at some point we see his face, and he's looking at us, and he says, "Get me the fuck out of here." And so we scurry to get the rest of the debris off of him, and he, once we get his arms out, he pushes the rest of this debris off. He jumps up, and he climbs through that window in the sort of ceiling in the wall ish, and he gets out, and I assume he goes to the radio. And then I don't remember the other kid being in the room anymore, the RTO. So he must have also gotten out of the room while we were doing that. And they're getting on the radio to start calling, for QRF and support and all of that. And the next thing I know is one of the guys runs around the corner, one of our soldiers, and he goes, "I need help." And he's really panicked. And he says, "Hey, I need help. I need help." And so we run around the back of the building, and that room that was behind us, the whole room is gone. Like the ceiling is gone, the roof's gone. There's just a big crater and just a ton of mud and debris. Damn. And I'm like, what the heck is this? And he's like, that's where all of the other squad, one of the squads, is all sleeping right there. And so I realized that what he's telling me is that his squad is under that debris, completely buried by the building.
How many people?
Oh, I don't know at this point.
Yeah.
And so, right about that time, a couple of the other guys start stumbling in, and they all start digging, because everyone knows that's where those guys are sleeping, and they start digging in that debris. And somewhere very quickly thereafter, another guy runs over to me and says, "Hey, there's a bunch of Afghans. Our commanders are all hurt." And so I go to the front of the building, and the Afghans are coming out of their room, and they all are injured. They all have like bleeding from the head. I guess probably where they slept, their roof fell in, but they were all awake having tea. And so it hit them all, and they had head injuries. One guy's, I remember his eye being pretty messed up. And so I turn back to one of our soldiers, and I say, "Hey, I can't help you guys dig. I have to help these guys because they're injured now. Tell me as soon as you find one of our guys." And so I start treating the Afghans, wrapping up their injuries and treating them.
Who called the 9 line?
I don't know. It must have been my platoon leader, is what I assume.
Okay.
And so then they come back to me and they say, "Hey, we got one of the guys. We found one of our guys." And so I go into the room, and just as I get there, they've unburied his head, and he doesn't look like he's been breathing. He looks very pale. And so as I turn around to grab my aid bag, my platoon leader just pulls a bunch of dirt or my platoon sergeant pulls a bunch of dirt out of his mouth, and he sits straight up and is breathing. He just sits up and we're like, oh shit, that guy's alive, you know? And same kind of thing like my platoon leader, get me out of here. And he gets him out and he's pale as death, but he's awake. And I say, okay, I got to go treat the rest of the Afghans. Tell me if you find more people. And so right now we have pretty good spirits. The platoon leader got out, he's alive. Andrew Wright got out, he's alive. I'm treating the Afghans. And I think this is about the time that we start hearing aircraft arrive. Mm-hmm. And so the first aircraft arrive, and I remember I'm like, I'm going to run out to the aircraft and meet them, but I don't have any gear on. I don't even think I had boots on. I'm just in a silk top. So I throw on somebody else's body armor and helmet, and I run out to the aircraft, and I tell them what's going on. Hey, I have like 6 or 7 Afghan casualties, and I don't know where the rest of my guys are. And when we start loading the Afghans into those first aircraft. And so once those aircraft are full, they depart, and more aircraft are arriving. We can hear them. And now we're just back in the room, just digging to try to unbury the guys that are still under this building. And as each of them, as we get to them, you know, they call me over, you know, wherever they are, where someone unburied, you know, one of the guys, and they obviously, they just don't look like they are alive, right? Mm-hmm. But I go to check their pulse because we've unburied the head, and I remember my squad leader telling me, hey, when you check a pulse on someone who is really close to being dead, or someone who doesn't have a pulse, you're going to be so hyped up. Your heart rate's going to be through the roof that you're going to feel your own pulse in every part of your body, in your ears, in your nose. And so you got to take a second to breathe and really determine if the patient or casualty is alive or not. And I remember thinking that very vividly of like, okay, calm down, check this person's pulse, feel it, nothing, no pulse. I say, hey guys, you know, he's dead. We have to move on to try to unbury the next guys. And so we move over to the next person, or, you know, where we think the next people are, and we're still digging. And, you know, at some point, and I don't remember all of the aircraft, but at some point, you know, a medic shows up with a crash axe and is helping us like dig with a crash axe. One of our guys has like an e-tool, but most of my guys are using their hands, and they're tearing their fingernails off. Yeah. They're bleeding from their fingers, just trying to dig. You know, my platoon leader and some of the other guys are still pulling security because they were not sure if there's going to be a follow-on attack. At some point, a QRF platoon shows up with some more vehicles, and they start, you know, cordoning on where we are. And with each guy that we unbury, I come over, and there's no signs of life. They're just dead.
And these are your friends, right?
These are guys that I did JRTC with, and that I trained with, and that I, you know, did IVs on their girlfriends in the barracks back at Fort Campbell or whatever. Like these are our people. Yeah. And we unbury one of them, and, you know, now I'm getting frustrated because I'm the medic. I'm supposed to do something to help these guys, right? And I've treated the Afghans, and I think there were 8 Afghans that were injured that we flew out on those first 2 helicopters, and I just can't do anything. I can't like take out a piece of equipment and do something. And so for one of them, I really was convinced he was alive. He had a chance. He had a pulse. And so I criked him. I cut his throat open. I put a breathing tube down his throat, and I start breathing for him, and we get him the rest of the way out. And I remember carrying him to the medevac, and Ryan Drawman is the crew chief that I'm giving this patient to, and I'm yelling at him to breathe for this guy. And he's giving me this crazy look. And years later, and knowing Ryan, he's like, probably gave me that look because he's like, this guy's dead. You know, he doesn't have a chance. But I'm giving this look like, start breathing for this dude. You know, take him. And we you know, we're between the blast site and the aircraft. And at some point, the Air Force PJs arrive, and they have like 10 guys, and they have all this cool gear, and they're specially trained for rescue type stuff. And 8 of them go and pull security with their weapons. They're like pulling security on the bumper of a truck with a 50 cal on the top. It's like, I don't need you guys to pull security. I need you guys to help me. Mm-hmm. My guys don't have fingernails anymore because they've been digging for their brothers under this building. And they were just under this building a few minutes ago. And as I've told the platoon that each of these guys is deceased, they're trusting me completely that what I've told them was the right thing, and they're moving on to try to find the next person to see if there's a chance. And these guys are like in their sleeping bags. They're like cutting open their sleeping bags to try to see if we can get to these guys. Yeah. And one of these PJs takes out a King LT airway device, like a tube that you would put in someone's mouth to help them breathe. And he starts pushing it into the mouth of one of my teammates, one of my platoon that's dead, that I just told the platoon, Collins is dead. We got to move on to try to find the next guys. And as this Air Force guy with all his swoopty cool gear is treating this guy, I can tell that my platoon is all of a sudden questioning, like, is Andrew right? Like, he's a 20-year-old private. This guy is an expert and he's doing something that Andrew didn't do. And so has he been wrong this whole time? And in an instant, in 17 years of thinking about this, in that instant, they questioned whether or not what I was telling them was right. And just as he's putting this tube in this guy's mouth, who's obviously dead, this flight medic grabs that guy's shoulders and moves him to the side. And he takes that airway device out of, halfway in this dead guy's mouth, and he pulls it out and he looks at him and says, "Don't touch another fucking person here." And then he just goes about his business. And I remember it being weird to me because, not weird, but just being unique to me because he was this big dude and he was black. And there are, like, in my platoon, in the infantry, there was like one black guy and none of the people that came in to help us were African American. And I was like, man, that black flight medic just like reestablished trust to me as the platoon medic that, hey, what I was telling you this whole time was right. These guys are already deceased. Keep moving on, keep driving forward. And then this guy questions it. And then this other flight medic with the flight helmet on, sort of reestablished that, like, no, we're doing the right thing. And so we evacuate the rest of the guys and we load them up. And at this point, we're just loading them in their sleeping bags into the aircraft and we evacuate them. And so all in all,
you stay on site?
Yeah, I drove out with the QRF platoon, and there were 7 of us, I think 7, that drove out. Everybody else we evac'd. So six guys in my platoon were killed, and then something like 7 or 8 Afghans we evac'd, and then the difference was like 8 or 9 other of my guys. Like, we evac'd my platoon leader, even though he was okay because he was unconscious under this building. Like, you got to go get checked out. And there were a bunch of guys that went just because they were pretty bad off, even though they weren't, dying. It's like, you need to go get checked. You were just not breathing. Go get checked. And then the rest of us drove out with the QRF platoon when it was done. And we get back to the FOB and we're refitting, and it's one of those same kind of stories like you're saying, like, we're all dirty and tattered and bloody, and of course the first thing you want to do is get some chow. And of course, there's some sort of little conflict at the chow hall where someone's not happy that you're dirty or whatever. Yeah, but
some bullshit.
The other thing I remember vividly from that is, or after the fact, was just being on the FOB, and there was like kind of a ring route of aircraft that would bring mail or whatever, and every couple of days they would bring one of our injured guys back to the FOB, the ones that we had sent out to get kind of just checked on. And so Thomas Crease and I, that machine gunner, and I would go to the airfield, the little LZ in our FOB, every day when that aircraft would come inbound, and we would just wait and see if one of our guys came back. And so, here comes one of the guys, "Hey, good to see you. God, you're back on the platoon," or whatever. And then one of those evenings, my platoon leader got off that helicopter, right? And he's the dude that we dug out from that building. And I just remember him like giving me and Thomas a big hug and just being like, "Thank you. Yeah. I'm alive because of you guys." Yeah. And I remember that being like, that solidified everything that we trained for, everything that we, trained together as a brotherhood. And it kind of made the sting or the pain of the guys that we had lost, like, okay, we didn't lose all of them. Like this guy could have easily have died also and didn't. And here he is with us. And so it was a wild experience.
Yeah. How did you keep everything together? You're 20 years old.
Yeah. Well, I guess I was 21 because my birthday's early December. This was the 12th of December. So I just turned 21, but I don't think there was a choice. We were halfway through a deployment. A ton of the other units in the battalion and brigade had been losing people. We were, we had people get injured and go home, but we were all there. And so it was just like, okay, like we lost our guys now. But I do remember walking around the rest of the deployment, really questioning, like, why am I not dead? Like, why didn't the rest of us die? Why didn't I die? Why did only part of that building fall on me versus all of it? And then at a specific moment thinking like, okay, I'm probably going to die here. Like it's probably going to be it. There's too many opportunities. There's too many chances. There's too many people getting hurt and killed. We got 6 more months. Like I'm already dead.
Yeah. Did your wife know what was going on at the time, or you kept that from her?
So the funny story about Megan for this is that maybe it's not a funny story, but that first guy that got his leg broken in that very first IED blast, he went home and he stayed in touch with most of our families, and we had known each other. We're in the same platoon, and so he called Megan and said, "Hey, somebody got blown up. We don't know who, but you probably want to be around Fort Campbell." And so she was like with her parents, and so she drove back to Fort Campbell. And so she's a little bit not sure what's going on and what happened, but we know something happened. And the next day, a news article came out and it said 6 killed in Afghanistan, meaning the 6 guys in my platoon.
Damn.
My wife, for some reason, thought SIX is my name. And so she said, oh, it must mean that Andrew got killed in Afghanistan. So for about like 3 days, she was just waiting to get a knock on the door that like, it's about to happen. Why haven't they found me? Did I have the wrong address on my DD-93 and SGLI or whatever? And so for 3 days, she thought that I was like, dead. Damn. And then another news article came out and it had a photo of my platoon at the memorial service on our fob for those 6 guys, right? Battlefield crosses and boots. And in the picture, it's a guy crying and it's his hand covering his face, which is me. It's me crying, my hand on my face. You can barely tell it's me. But she's like, oh, I saw your hand. I knew it was your hand. That's how I found out that you weren't one of those guys that got killed. That's how I found out you were alive, was a picture of you crying. And all I can see is your hand and a 101st patch.
Damn. What was your biggest takeaway from that deployment?
There are so many. I think I learned a lot about being a member of a team, being a medic, being trusted by the people of your team. Like we talked about, that like you don't have to do everything to still be useful to the team. And sometimes it's more important to be trusted to do when you're called to do that thing right.
Correct.
And then I really learned I want to go be a flight medic. There was something about that guy's kind of demeanor and persona, what he probably didn't even know, that he reestablished the trust to my platoon for the rest of that mission, for the rest of every other mission, that like kind of little moment of no, this kid's actually doing it right. I was like, I want to be able to be that guy in the future.
Who's that guy?
Rakeem Francis.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, of course. So he tells the story a little differently with me running around frantically, and I probably was, but I just don't remember it quite.
I think
quite like
one
that.
of the greatest things about Heroes Have Wings is all our stories are coming together.
Yeah,
because we all tell stories. Our perception of the story is different because we may be experiencing different levels of stress, right?
Yeah, 100%.
Like you're going through a lot. You've been there since the bomb impacted. You're under the rubble yourself. Rakeem shows up. He's fresh, right?
Yep.
So he's clear-minded. He knows he doesn't know what's going on, but he's at least clear-minded and he can assess the situation. When things start happening, you know how it is. We get that tunnel vision.
Yeah.
And we got to focus on this one thing, and that's all that was going on. I mean, you guys got different things going on. So you get back from Afghanistan. Do you pursue that dream of becoming a flight medic?
Yeah. So I think actually Rakeem talked about it a little bit, how it happened, but it was sort of divine intervention or whatever. But one of the guys in my platoon played adult softball, men's league with a guy that was a flight medic. And so he told me, he said, hey man, I was like, oh, I want to go to the 160th. I think that's what I want to do, be a flight medic 160th. And he was like, well, a guy on my team is a flight medic. Why don't you just come talk to him about it a little bit? And so I was like, okay, I'll go talk to him, And so he's like, yeah, come to the ball field and just, when we're done, you guys can chat. And so he like texts me a time and I show up and they're like most way done. I like wait for like an hour. And then this guy's like cooking hot dogs on the back of his truck or whatever. And I'm just kind of like this weirdo standing there. And it's just like, I'm kind of like outside my element and like waiting for the student. Finally, he like takes the time to like say hi to me or whatever. And I kind of tell him that I want to be a flight medic or whatever. And he sort of like blows me off, but he's like, well, if you want to like come by the unit, like on Monday or whatever, I'll introduce you to like like one of the senior guys and we can like see where it goes from there or whatever. And so I go to the unit and,
Is it true he told you go do something else?
I don't remember. Probably he was pretty dismissive initially, just like whatever, this fucking idiot, you know. And so I go to the unit and I meet Stevenson, who I guess worked at the S3 or something like that, because I had to interview with him, and I'd done the deployment that they all also came back from, if that makes sense, right? Yep. So they supported my brigade. I'm an infantry medic from that brigade. They're all the aviation guys. And I had the right paperwork, the right awards, the right record, you know. And so they're like, okay, yeah, if your brigade's willing to sign off on it, then we'll take you. And so now I have to go back to my brigade and I got to go get permission to leave. And so I go interview with the brigade commander and the brigade sergeant major, who's Colonel Walrath. And so Colonel Walrath is the one that said, you know, I tell him what I want to do and talk to him about wanting to be a flight medic. And I don't really remember a lot of the interactions, except for I just done the deployment. I just done EFMB, which is like a pretty important medic kind of training thing. And I just done the best medic competition, which I didn't win. But like they liked that I represented the brigade and I did a good job. And so I had met them a couple of times. They gave me a coin or whatever. So now here I am again. I'm like, hey, I want to go be a flight medic. I want to leave the brigade. And I remember him saying something like, I'm going to ask this brigade to put themselves in harm's way. And they're going to do it because they trust that you, who I'm going to let go be a flight medic, is going to come get them. Something to that. That's what I took away from that interaction. And so I remember thinking like, damn, that's pretty heavy, right? And so he signed my paperwork. I went to go be to be a flight medic.
Crazy thing, I just want to add, I don't know if the audience is aware of this. Colonel Walrath is the colonel that I saved that day. Yep. And it's amazing how I really believe in divine intervention, how he said that to you. And then fast forward 2012,
right?
Flight
and
medics,
Troy's picking him up,
saving his life that day. So that's crazy how small the world is. Man.
Well, it's almost like he knew. He was telling me what was about to happen to him in some sense. You know what I mean?
That's crazy, man. But man, that gave me the chills right there. Yeah.
I have another interaction with him later that we can talk about too.
Oh, we will. But, so he signs off on the paperwork. You go back to Charlie Company?
So I bring it back to 6th Battalion, and they, it's just I did an interpost transfer from 2nd Brigade to 6th Battalion, 101st Aviation Brigade, and I just sign in to the unit, and I'm not trained as a flight medic. I'm just a medic, and I start working in the training room with Rakim. He was like in the training room, so I'm like doing records and 4187s for this and that, and like the kind of the punk work, waiting to get a slot to flight medic school.
Down at Rucker, right?
Down at Rucker, Yep. And it was a pretty wild time, I think, because I met all the guys that were staying in the unit, but also the guys that were leaving, all of them that had supported 2nd Brigade, because a lot of the company supported 2nd Brigade on that deployment. And so I was talking to all the different crew chiefs and pilots and flight medics that had picked up friends of mine.
Yeah.
Oh, hey, remember when such and such happened? Yeah, I do. And that we would talk about it. So it was really weird kind of almost like closure for some of those things. Some of the cases that I knew a guy personally, but I didn't know what happened or whatever. I talked to like Jack Baird and these guys that were telling me these stories. I'm like, oh yeah, I know exactly what you're talking about.
Yeah. That's crazy.
So that was kind of a cool.
Yeah, get that dual perspective on everything, man. That's pretty unique right there.
Yep. And I thought at this point I'm on top of the world. Like I'm combat proven. Now I have my combat medic badge. I can put it back on my car, and then kind of quickly seeing these guys talk about medicine, seeing them work. I'm like, oh crap, I don't know anything, right? Like I know how to do it with sticks and rags and a backpack. These guys are doing it next level. The medicine that you are required to perform is much, much more significant. And I realized like I'm way out of my depth. And so I go to flight medic school at Fort Rucker, and that's like barely scraping the surface. I mean, that's like, I don't remember if it's 4 weeks long or something. And again, you get this, like, you feel like, oh yeah, you're good. And then I'd get back and I remember do you remember the co-op building next to 6th Battalion?
Yeah.
There's like the hangar, and then there's like that other building, the co-op.
Yeah, yeah.
And I remember getting back and I have to go tell Rakim that I'm back from flight medic school. I remember him in the bathroom, and I knock on the door and I'm like, Sergeant Francis, I'm back. And he's like, hey, tell me about, like this medicine. And he just like names a medicine, metoprolol. What's it used for? What's the dose? How do you give it? And I'm standing, at attention or parade dress outside the door, like trying to spit out whatever I remember about that medicine. And I remember he walked out, he pulls it out of his pocket, and he goes, "Go learn more about that," and walks off. And I'm just like, what the heck? But that was the grilling that made us better. But
so, what year was that when you got back from flight medic school?
That would have been 11, sometime in 11. Get back from flight medic school, but I don't start flying, and we deploy early 12. Yeah, maybe it was probably early 12 I went to flight medic school.
Okay, yeah, because we left July 2012. What platoon were you a part of?
So I was an unprogressed medic attached to first platoon. I was officially in headquarters platoon.
So where'd you stay when we got there? Were you in Bagram, Shank?
I went to Shank right off the rip. Yep.
And you stayed there the whole time?
No. So I went to Shank. I think the idea was progress at Shank, spend some time down there, and maybe move, maybe stay. And so when we got there, I remember it being, I'm going right back to Afghanistan. I've been here. I had a tough deployment, a couple years ago. I'm like, some of these guys, they don't know what it's like, and we get there, and then it was very different from what I thought it was going to be.
Well, you're in two different parts of Afghanistan now. And for anybody that hasn't been to Afghanistan, southern Afghanistan is completely different from northern Afghanistan. It essentially could be two different countries.
Might as well be.
So you're getting down there. Sorry to interrupt you, but
no.
You got to Afghanistan. Did you realize that the terrain was different and that things were going to be different? Because now...
No, I don't think I really spent any time thinking about that. I remember, the first couple of days we were there was a rocket attack on Shank that killed one of the 82nd flight medics. Mm-hmm. And it injured one of our pilots pretty badly and one of our flight operations NCOs pretty badly. And so, from the deployment before, we were never anywhere long enough to get IDF. Like, I remember hearing about IDF on other places, but my infantry platoon was always out in sector so long that we got directly attached, like machine guns and RPGs. Yep. So this idea of IDF was like kind of foreign and somewhat terrifying. I was like, oh shit, I could be asleep and a rocket's just going to fall from the sky. Like, that's very different than I can see the guy shooting at me and I can shoot back. And so I felt somewhat like more helpless, from that. Then that medic from the 82nd gets killed and it's like, oh, yep, we're right back in it. This is real. And then I started progressing basically. And so I went through progression. My first day on RL1 was the day that VBID blew up Shank.
Yeah, I remember that.
And I remember having this weird kind of feeling like I was in a VBID already once. Mm-hmm. Now there's another freaking VBID. Yeah. Like, this is crazy. And I remember some of the medics, because that was my first day on duty. I was on duty with Jay Kenny, and the other medics all ran down the road to the blast site where the VBID, like this humongous VBID, boom, blows up. And the medics just grab their aid bags and run out of the CP and just start running down the road towards this big cloud of dust. And some other people, a bunch of the guys. But I just remember being like, oh, this is a different group of people, right? I'm like, okay, my platoon probably would have done that, but like these are people that I thought were just like, they're not combat hardened, they're like aviators, And then I'm like, they're doing that. I'm like, oh shit, like this is the real deal.
This is a real deal.
And they did, and their story, I mean, you'll have to get some of them to tell their stories, but, Apple Hands and Ward and those guys were like running into a blast zone with no idea what was going on, no idea of the carnage that they may or may not be running into. I was signing for meds, and Kenny was like, hey, you're going to go get on the Chinook. We're going to probably put 20 patients on there. Get ready. And so I met up with the Chinook guys. They were setting up their litter stanchions to be able to hold 20 patients or 24 patients. And I was making sure the ICS cord was long enough and my bag had enough stuff in it. And we ended up not doing it. They flew a fixed wing in to fly the patients out. But that was like my first day RO1. It's like, oh crap, this is pretty wild.
Yeah, I was thinking, you're probably thinking like, this is a whole nother level of shit right here.
Yeah.
Because it's like a lot of the other flight medics said, you guys see a lot of people on their worst day. And it's everything. You guys, all that stuff is just compiling on you guys, and it's just one person after another and after another. And so it is a lot going on. What was your most memorable moment in that 2012-13 deployment?
That deployment is very blurry in my mind. So I spent the summer at Shank, flew some missions, one of the things first platoon did was everyone had a nickname. And I don't remember everyone's nicknames, but something would happen and you get a nickname. And here I am. I think that I'm like a war-hardened, badass. And I remember flying with Tim Ward. We pick up some patient, and I don't remember what was wrong with them, but we bring him to the FST at Shank. And I remember the surgeon, I'm like giving a report to the doc, and I give it, and it's probably terrible or whatever. And I remember the surgeon looking at Tim and just going like, "What's up with Bambi over here?" And so my nickname is Bambi, and it has been ever since, at least for those guys. Yeah. Johnny Cuban's probably the only one that remembers that. But that hit me the same kind of thing of like, oh, I took care of 40 guys in the worst times of their lives, but as a flight medic, you're taking care of, several brigades worth of their platoons and their battalions and their companies and SOF and people that are coming in and people that, there's a way bigger entire, area of responsibility that you're treating everybody's worst days of their lives, not just mine.
You're covering a huge battle space there, man. It's
and Shank in 12, I mean, everywhere in 12 was a busy popping place.
Shank was a shit show, man. It was rough down there for you guys.
And then I went to Bagram for basically the second half of the deployment, and I did a lot of critical care transports. I flew a lot with Rakim. We were roommates in Bagram, and so that was a very also really cool experience. I mean, really those years being in Charlie Company were really cool to me, mostly because of all of the guys that had supported my platoon on that first deployment. And so I think there were several pilots that flew to the VB that blew up my platoon that were still there that I got to fly with. I flew with Ryan Drummond a bunch of times, and he was one of those crew chiefs. I flew with Rakim a bunch of times. And we had some funny times. I remember Rakim choking someone out, Drummond out with Drummond's own leg, as they wrestled. I don't know that I have a specific moment that's the most memorable. It was really, really eye-opening. I think probably the biggest thing I took away from the leadership standpoint was that at Shank, it was a tough go. I mean, the IDF was really bad. It was dangerous. There was, people getting hurt. They were seeing a ton of just traumatic shit. I mean, there was a Willie Pete round that hit in front of the CP and lit the container of our equipment on fire. There was white phosphorus holes being burnt into our shipping container from one of the rounds, things like that. But without fail, there was this little deck out there. Did you go to Shank? Do you remember? I mean, everyone had the little hangout spot. Yeah. You were at Bagram or at JBAD.
Yeah, I was at JBAD.
And so we would go out there and hang out, and Stevenson would smoke a pipe. And he had this crazy eagle claw pipe. And everybody eventually bought a pipe. Yeah. And I remember Apple Hands had this real long Gandalf pipe, and everyone smoked. I smoked mostly cigars, but we would all be out there smoking pipes or cigars. And I remember him saying, tell me about your day. And he would kind of go around the room, and it was just mostly the medics and the crew chiefs, sometimes the flight ops or our pilots. And they would just talk through the missions they had that day. And they would talk about some pretty fucked up shit that they saw and that they dealt with. And they talk about, so-and-so leaving them on the LZ or this thing, guy shooting this thing the wrong way, or all of these things. Some of the stories you've heard here. And I remember they're all telling him their trauma and them being able to voice their trauma to the old crusty guy, right? Like Stevenson was that guy, right? And his nickname was Tiny Dancer. Yeah. And he's this huge biker looking dude, and they're just they're being vulnerable to him. They're telling him how their day went, and then he's doing the same. He's like, yeah, I had a mission where I did XYZ, and he's we're conversing about it, and that really stuck with me. And later on, as I became the old crusty guy, we've never stopped doing that.
Yeah. How important do you think that is, communicating and sharing stories?
Dude, I think especially in our well, I think it's important in general, but especially to a group of generally sort of type A alpha personalities, being able to be vulnerable and not weak. Those two things are often seen as being the same, and they're not. Correct. And so I think he's telling them I'll beat the crap out of all of you if you want me to. I'm a tough dude with ice water veins who was in the Pentagon on 9/11, right? All of that shit. It's but it's okay for you, Six, Apple Hands, Ramsey, Kenny, Ward. It's okay for you guys to tell me that you had a rough day. It's okay for you to tell me that today kind of sucked and that you did this wrong. Hey, you should have done, this procedure and you did instead do that one or whatever. And so there was education, there was mentorship, and there was safe safe space, kind of not in the like sort of stupid way, but in the like, it's still masculine and good to be open and honest with each other. So that really, I think, was a healthy thing that I learned from that deployment.
And you said it helped you become the leader you are today.
Yeah, I think so.
You still carry that tradition now?
I do.
That's
Yep.
powerful.
And we'll talk about, when I was a platoon sergeant, my last deployment, how we kind of did that. And really it started there with Danny Stevenson.
That man's always changing lives.
Yeah.
It's very it's crazy how much of an impact he had in so many lives. It's even mine. So you get back from Afghanistan, 2013. What happens to 6 next? What do you do?
Yeah. So now they started some of your other guys have talked about it. They started this paramedic thing where they wanted every flight medic to go to paramedic school. And I was really debating between going to the 160th and going to paramedic school. And it ultimately came down to
Excuse me real quick.
Go ahead.
That paramedic school, they made that an Army thing?
Yeah. So Charlie Company did their own before the Army did, which a couple of your guys went to.
Yep.
Rakim did, I think Ward, some of those guys in between the 2008 and 2010 deployments. Charlie Company contracted a paramedic program. That was before I got there, before when I was
tracking that.
whatever.
But the Army made that
later.
standard.
The Army made it a requirement for every flight medic.
Look at 101st setting a standard.
Yeah, well, they weren't the only ones. To be fair, there were some other units doing the same thing, but yeah. So the Army did this big analysis that, hey, if we put paramedics on these aircraft, they're going to have better survivabilities. We're asking those flight paramedics to do more critical skills that are very challenging as we push. So the Army pushed surgical teams further and further forward, and now the only people to move those surgical patients are helicopters, and those are people with complex medicines, complex problems. I mean, a surgeon opened them and fixed something and temporarily closed them. You don't want to put that guy on an ambulance and bump him around a road or put him on a helicopter without someone that can keep them alive on a ventilator with some vasoactive drugs, all that kind of stuff.
Yeah, I remember that in 2012, 13, we had those nurses, those PAs on the back of the aircraft with us.
And that was the bridge. So the Army said, we got to get these advanced critical care paramedics on the aircraft, but that's going to take us, a while. What do we do in between? Well, what the civilians do is they put a nurse with a paramedic on a helicopter, right? And so that's what the Army started doing. And we put the ECCNs on the aircraft.
All right, that makes sense.
Yep.
So you go to that school?
Yep. So in 13, I go to Fort Sam. It's like almost a year long. Basically, 13 to the beginning of 14, I'm at Fort Sam in paramedic school, and just I'm loving it. I mean, it's like all of the things that I wish I had known the year before. Like, oh, that makes way more sense now. It was really, really good time. It was also nice little bit of break from those 2 back-to-back deployments that I mean, they were tough. They were tough years to be deployed. A lot of loss, a lot of trauma from those years.
Yeah.
And so it was nice to have that break at Fort Sam.
So you get done with paramedic school. Where do you go next?
Yeah. So at the end of paramedic school, now my wife's expecting. We're going to have our first kid.
Let's go.
And I, of course, reach out to Branch and I say, hey, I really want to go back to Fort Campbell. That's where my wife's family is.
Yeah.
And so they go, happens, to be that they are about to deploy. So you're more than welcome to go back to Fort Campbell. So I went right back to Charlie 6101.
Nice.
It would have been the summer of 14, the middle of 14, and in early 15 we deployed again. And this time I just pinned staff sergeant before the deployment. I'm
How old are
an
you?
FI. In 2015, I'm 24, 25, something like that.
24, 25. I asked that because the average 24 and 25-year-old not doing those things, man. And it's crazy just to know that at age 20, what you were doing, and now within that short amount of time, we're talking about 5 to 6 years, how much experience you have as a combat veteran, flight medic, and a lot of things going on. So it says a lot about who you are.
I felt old.
Yeah.
I mean, I felt long in the tooth, so to speak, right? Like I was like, oh, I've got 2 combat deployments. I've seen a lot of things. I've done a lot of things. I'm like, I got this under my belt. And every time you think that something hits you that you weren't sort of expecting.
When you got back to Charlie Company after that year break, was it a whole completely different company?
Yeah. I mean, there were some people that had stayed. I mean, there were guys that were there, from the 10 deployment still. There were a lot of new faces. And now I'm like a senior guy almost, right? Like I was an FI. I think Tim Ward and Rakeem Francis were the only more senior guys. I think everybody else was new, something like that. I could be off a little bit. And I go right back to Rakeem's platoon. He's the 4th platoon sergeant. I slide in to be his E6 basically. We train up to be FIs. We're rolling. We're doing a ton of medical training. We starting a program to train at Vanderbilt with the medics. We have all these different things going on. We're like focused on the two of us. Like, we're going to make these medics as medically prepared for the things that they're going to face coming forward, maybe even to the detriment of their flying capabilities. But I remember telling people, at the end of the day, there's 2 pilots and a crew chief who are flying you safely from point A to point B. There's only one of you that's taking care of the patient. And so when there's a patient on this aircraft, I almost don't care about how good you are as a crew member. I need you to be the best medic you can be, because your crewing time is sort of temporary, if that makes sense.
Yep. It goes back to what we talked about, right? Positions.
Yeah.
Understand your position at the right time. When there's not a patient on there, be the best crew member you possibly can be. But always understand and remember that your primary job on this aircraft is to fix people and keep them alive until we get them to that medical facility.
Yeah.
So that's kudos for you guys to make sure you ingrain that.
Standard. Not all of them liked it. There's some joy in crewing and flying, and it's an exciting thing. And a lot of times, especially in the States, you don't want to do a bunch of medicine when all we're doing is flying around a helicopter. Like, let's lay back and enjoy this. But I remember making them carry mannequins in the aircraft. I remember them making crew chief and medic do CPR while they're just flying the training area, and it got to the point where, some of them probably felt like they were being hazed. Like, we were sort of like making them do more than they needed to, making it harder than it needed to be. But I think that the ones that knew that, like, we're doing this because if we can make this repetition here in the States a little bit challenging, it's only going to prepare you for when it really is challenging.
Correct. I think
a little bit of sweat now saves you a little bit of sweat later, kind of thing.
I agree 100%. I think the people that felt that way, they just didn't know.
Right.
They didn't know what they were getting themselves into.
Yep.
And I live by that philosophy even to this day. We train as we fight, and we fight like we train. If we're not doing the stuff that we're going to be doing, you're not going to be prepared. And realistically, we never be prepared enough for combat, right? But I agree with you. If you've never done CPR, period, on a human being on the back of an aircraft while it's flying at night, what makes you think you're ready for that?
Right.
So if I'm having you do it on a dummy, be happy that you're getting this exposure at least. Because when it really happens, it's a whole nother thing, because now we got blood. It's a real human, right? So you guys are doing the right thing. And the younger guys, when they get older, they'll understand, right?
Yeah. And that was kind of I think that was sort of the logic we used. But it's, you can explain that to people and they can understand the words coming out of your mouth, but not understand the intent, right? And so it was a struggle every day. And sometimes it was the pilots, right? The pilots are like, I don't want to do a bunch of whatever extra stuff just for you to be able to do that medical training. But most of them very quickly realized, like, hey, do whatever you want back there. I'm going to do what I need to do. Let's chat a little bit ahead of time for the mission. And most of them quickly realized that we're about to deploy again, and that we're going to have sick and injured people on here, and that the medics have to be as good as they can be. And so we're getting them there.
Yeah. What year was that deployment?
So that was it's basically all of 15.
All of
I think
15?
15 was a 9-month deployment. I think we might have deployed in like April. I don't exactly remember the month, but we got back just prior to Christmas.
Where'd you guys go?
So I went back to Kandahar. The company went to basically all of Afghanistan. There was a little contingent from 3rd ID that was in part of the West. And the company headquarters was Bagram. We had Jbad. We had Shank again. Now it's called Dalkey. And then my platoon went to Kandahar. And so just before that deployment, I was with Rakeem and 4th Platoon. But I guess the platoon going to Kandahar didn't have an FI. And so since I was an FI, they cut me from 4th Platoon, put me into 2nd Platoon so that they would have an FI in Kandahar. So I deployed with that platoon down there.
What were the differences between that deployment and your first 2 deployments?
Now I'm in a sort of a leadership role, right? Like I'm not the platoon sergeant. There is a platoon sergeant, but I'm the FI. So I'm sort of the senior trainer, and I'm the only guy that's done it previously. I'm the only guy with experience as a flight medic. They had guys with experience deployed, but not as a flight medic. And it's a big difference. There's a lot that's different about being a flight medic than being a medic in general. And the company, I think, atrophied quite a bit of pilot experience. The 15 deployment, I think, was tough because we lost a lot of not lost in a lot of guys PCS retired,
Correct.
a lot of experienced pilots. They did maybe even the 08 deployment, but they at least did the 10 and 12 back to back. Those were quick. Those were down and dirty. They were tough deployments. And then a lot of people left after that. And I think maybe it was just timing from the 12 to the 15. There was a bit longer of a break. Mm-hmm. So guys were like, this is the time to stop. This is the time to move on. Some of those people probably, like I was sort of like hooked on the wheel ever turning of deployments. And now that there wasn't a deployment in sight, they probably felt, okay, it's time to step back. And some of those guys, 20, more than 20 years of service. So, but the company suffered a bit from that. And so at my site at Kandahar, we were pretty weak in experience overall, right? I'm the only backseater. I'm the only medic with experience. There's only one other crew chief that has any flying experience from a deployment. The platoon leader, a fantastic person, love her to death, but she's a PI. And so she's still training on how to be a pilot in command. And the pilot and the person training her is one of the only other experienced pilots. And so we lost a lot of experience, and it came through on the deployment. We had some other good pilots that held the team together, but that's not enough. You need more than just the pilots that are going to hold the team together. Yeah. And then to make it a little bit more challenging, no offense to the Apache world, but we were attached to the Apache battalion, and so even the battalion doesn't really have a lot of Black Hawk experience that you could maybe kind of steal from, or
Correct.
Right. If you're assigned to say 5th Battalion, maybe that SP will come fly with your people because he's a Black Hawk, pilot. Whereas they're Apache pilots, they're kind of in their own little world. They expect you to do your job well. We probably could use some of the experience, but there's really nothing out there. So it was kind of a tough year. It was tough for interpersonal stuff. We had a lot of interpersonal conflicts.
Did they deploy Mike models that year?
Yeah.
They did?
We did both. The 12 and 15 were both Mike models.
Okay.
And so the big significant kind of one of the things that happened in that deployment is that we essentially crashed a helicopter. We were relocating a helicopter to a site, and the Apaches had landed down and safe. We landed down and safe, and we're staged on this old closed FOB to cover a SF mission. And where they had put us was like a mile from where they want us to live, and there's one little like SUV to get us to the aircraft. So we get to the ground force, and we're like, hey, this isn't going to work. We need our helicopters to be closer, because if we get a call and there's only one truck and the Afghan guy has the key, and who knows where he's going to be, who knows where the truck's going to be, we're not going to be able to get off and rescue someone, in a timely manner. If the aircraft's all the way down there, we got to relocate the aircraft closer to where we're living. And in doing that, I was on the lead aircraft, the chase aircraft positioned into this closer LZ. And then when we tried to position in front of them, we essentially rolled out in the dust landing and went into a ditch and rolled the helicopter over.
Damn. You were on that aircraft?
I was.
Damn.
And so it ended up like sort of on its side in a ditch, but it's ruined. You can't, all the blades were shredded. There were some Afghans sleeping under a vehicle next to us, and as the blades shredded and pieces of the blades flew all around them, those guys about crapped their pants.
Damn.
And then so the other aircraft's the only one now that's viable, that's useful. So we go back to the ground force, and we call the battalion and we call the boss, and we're telling them, hey, this aircraft's destroyed, and we're all okay, and we're writing sort of our notes of what happens, because we know we're gonna have to fill out sworn statements and all that. And as I'm doing that, I'm sitting in the talk, the radio goes off with a 9-line.
Damn.
With 3 casualties, one who's a double amputee, one with a head injury with a eye injury, and then I think 1 or 2 others from the ground force that we're supposed to be supporting this like SF mission or whatever.
Were the SF guys aware that you balled up this other aircraft? Or?
Nope.
Holy shit.
Nope. No, well, not to my knowledge.
Yeah.
And in this building, there's like this ground force with like a ground force commander. There's the 2 Apaches. There's like a mortar team, and there's a tiny little surgical team. There's like 2 little rooms with like a surgeon. And so we can only send 1 helicopter. So I remember giving the platoon sergeant my blood, because we carried blood at that point. I'm like, hey, you might as well take both units of blood. I can't go because I probably should have gone, but in my mind I was like, we're like quarantined. Like we crashed a helicopter, we got to pee and bleed. I probably could have like jumped on and been like, I'm a passenger or something, but it didn't even occur. They like launched. And
I think it's best that you didn't go, because that would have bit you in the ass
yeah,
big time.
probably.
It would have bit you in the ass
probably.
big time. So,
But it sucked for them because they went with one helicopter and they picked up 4 casualties.
Damn.
That's a lot to put on one.
Yeah.
We joked about after, like, would have been a nice time to have 2 helicopters. You know, you idiot.
how did the medic respond to that?
He did great. I mean, he was the platoon sergeant. He was an experienced guy. He was new to being a flight medic, but he was a very experienced guy, and so he did great. And then I just helped staff at the little medical team. And actually, the funny thing about that is that their nurse that puts you to sleep, their CRNA, she had never used the Army ventilator because she trained in a civilian hospital. And so when they were going to take this guy into surgery, she was somewhat uncomfortable with that machine. Well, it's the same machine we have in the helicopter. So I was like, hey, well, I'll come in there with you and I'll run the machine. You do the airway, I'll do the vent. And so I just basically scrubbed in as like the respiratory therapist for that case, and was able to be useful despite not having a helicopter.
What happened with that helicopter? They got balled up.
Well, they brought the dart team out. You know, they took the blades off. They pulled pieces and bits of it off to sling it back to Kandahar.
Okay.
And then it must have gone home at some point. I don't know much more other than that.
What was the outcome of that crash for you guys as a crew?
So, you know, it starts off with like a higher class of accident until they depreciate the aircraft value. And then I think it ended up being a class B based on the monetary value of the aircraft, and no one was hurt. But we had a pretty big stain on our platoon at that point. And then, you know, the SP comes to do the check ride for the pilots to get back to, you know, to get their flight orders back. And we flew with doors off, and they put the SKL on the floor by the collective. And when they left Kandahar and turned left, the SKL fell out into Kandahar city. And the SKL is like the encryption device for the radios. It's like not the thing you want to lose.
That's definitely something you don't
And
want to
so,
lose.
you know, we searched for it. They used they eventually saw like who had it or whatever. Some Afghan had it, but it was like, you know, it's like bad to worse. Like you bought this aircraft, and maybe that's the cost of business, and this is a dangerous job and all of that. But then in trying to get your orders back and show that you're still competent, you lose the thing. And so our platoon kind of struggled with having a good reputation. And then the company's way at Bagram, we're at Kandahar. Like, you got to take an airplane to get to us. You can't fly a helicopter. Like, we're in another part of the world kind of thing. It was a tough deployment. I learned a lot about sort of frustration with people and the unit. And
I mean, you're learning these things because you're in a leadership position now.
Yeah.
So it's different. It's different from being Private 6 to now Staff Sergeant 6.
Yep.
And a lot of not blame, but a lot of stuff comes down on leadership. And you got to figure out, because that whole thing of, well, I'm a private, I don't know, that doesn't apply anymore in life, right?
Now you have to know.
You have to know. And if you don't know, that's your fault because you don't know, because being a professional is knowing, right? So I could really see that. What was your biggest takeaway with dealing with all that stuff?
I think my biggest takeaway is that I was the E6, you know, FI, and I had a platoon sergeant, an E7 flight medic, and I really didn't do a good job of letting him be in charge and like enabling him. And he probably would say the same thing, that I did too much. I tried to take over too much. And in what I saw in my IP to my platoon leader, which I didn't like, I felt like the IP was trying to run the platoon instead of training the platoon leader and letting her run the platoon. I think I did that to him. And so that was my big takeaway, was that, like, you know, when in charge, be in charge. When not in charge, don't be in charge, right? Like let that guy be in charge. And I was a kind of hot-headed staff sergeant, like, you know, but that was probably the biggest one that I took away from that, was like, you gotta enable the people with you to be in charge. And it's not like they were, you know, ruining it and you're like, I have to control this and I got to fix the platoon because otherwise we're screwed and people are going to die. Like, no, it was just like a matter of difference of opinion. Like, they want to go right, you want to go left, and you find a way to justify that because you have experience left is right or is the correct way, when it wouldn't have really mattered either way. And I didn't learn that until I think later in reflection of that deployment. At the time, I probably learned that I didn't like IPs or something like that.
It's crazy because we look back and we talked about it several times already. Knowing your position, right? Doing what's required of you at the time and place. And I tell a lot of young people, not saying you're young, I'm a little bit older than you, but I'm not. This is not directed towards you. This is when I'm mentoring young people. To be a great leader, you must be a great follower. And you just hit the nail on the head.
Yeah.
Now that you have more years of wisdom and more experience, that there is a time for you to step up and lead. There's a time for you to just sit back and just be a follower, right?
Yeah.
I think that's a complex in the Army a lot. Not only you. That's one of the biggest issues I had in the Army. Too many people want to be in charge. Like, hey, some of us really need to be sit down somewhere fucking coloring. I mean, we all can't be making the coloring books, bro.
Yeah.
But I'm glad that you figured that out as you continue your career. So you get back from, what's this, your third deployment?
This is third, 2015.
Third deployment, get back to Fort Campbell. What do you do next?
So I get back to Fort Campbell. So this would have been like 2016, 2017. I'm a E6 FI. The company, again, kind of fragments. We get some new people in, and I'm just training. And maybe this is actually when we set up the Vanderbilt. We were trying to train with Vanderbilt. We would send guys down to the ICUs. And so that was one of my big projects was trying to get the medics some exposure to civilian medicine.
Mm-hmm.
And it was a couple of years back. One of the things we did in that time is we responded to the hurricane in Puerto Rico in 2017. And so we folded 8 helicopters, put them on C5s, and flew them to Puerto Rico after the hurricane in 2017. And we had basically no orders. It was like, go there and help. And so we didn't really know what to do. We didn't know what we were going to be asked to do. But we brought 8 helicopters and we started just flying food and water to the isolated portions of the island of Puerto Rico.
Damn.
And that was a really cool experience, I think, because there was almost no air traffic control. There was almost no airspace coordination or deconfliction. It was just like pilots going to have to be pilots, talk to each other, talk to people around you, keep yourself and your aircraft safe.
Mm-hmm.
And I mean, we probably PL'd an aircraft every day because of the weather or because of some sort of problem. I mean, the way the island's set up, there's like almost like a tropical a rainforest in the middle of the island. Right. And so that helps build a ton of pressure, and then this big thunderstorm basically rolls off the mountains into the rest of the island, and then it clears up in an hour or two. Mm-hmm. And so if you're stuck in one of those thunderstorms, it's thunder, lightning, zero visibility, like you're putting it down somewhere, and then you wait an hour, and then it is clear again. And so we did a lot of that, and it was really good. I think training for the new group of younger aviators that we got and younger medics. We cared for a couple of people. We flew a bunch of. There were some smaller hospitals that were going to lose power, and so we were going to fly their patients to the Comfort. They sailed the hospital ship down there, and so we were going to fly these elderly people that are hospital on a ventilator out to the Comfort, just purely because their generator wasn't going to have good power to keep them alive in the hospital. And so we did that. That was really good, and that was during that time in Puerto Rico. I was told, hey, I'm made the Sergeant First Class list, and I'm going to take a platoon, and we have a deployment in 18. And so I took over first platoon with Ben Krasowski, another K, and we were in Puerto Rico together. So we found out there that we were going to be platoon leader, platoon sergeant, and that we were going to have first platoon, and that we were going to be going to Afghanistan in 2018.
And this is still part of Charlie Company, right? 6101?
Yep.
How long did you spend there?
I got to 6101 in November of 2011, and I stayed until October of 2019. With just that break where I went to paramedic school.
Yeah, so 8 years?
Yeah, something like that. 8 or 9 years.
Wow, that's a long time.
Yeah. And then I was in 2nd Brigade first, so I was at Campbell for almost 12 years.
That's a good thing, though. I mean,
I'm trying to go back.
Besides the op tempo at Campbell, it is a beautiful area.
Yeah.
I mean, I've been here since 2006 myself.
Okay.
So once I got to Campbell, man, I fell in love with it too, and I did whatever I had to do to get back to Fort Campbell. It's a good spot.
Yeah.
So let's talk about this 2018 deployment.
Yeah. So 2018, we go back to Afghanistan, and
Where at this time?
I'm at Shank, which is now called Dalkey.
Okay.
Right? So I'm at Dalkey. I'm first platoon. I'm the platoon sergeant. Mm-hmm. It's like very what's the word? It's like not deja vu, but it was very like it's like serendipity or something. It's
Yeah.
like I've been here before, and I was a boot. Now I'm here, and I'm in charge.
You're
You
the
know,
guy in
and
charge. It's crazy because you remember those times on the porch with Sergeant Stevenson.
Yep.
And now you're that guy.
Yep.
It's like your medical career is coming full circle at
Yeah.
this point. That's pretty profound. I like that.
yeah, it's 100% is that, and there were days when after tough missions that we would smoke cigars and sit around a little fire out back, and I had a lot of like weird deja vu to the old guys, sitting around, and that's why we did it, is because I felt like it was important when I was an E5 flight medic or an E4 flight medic, and so I made the guys do it when I was a Sergeant First Class platoon sergeant.
When you deployed in 2018 with Charlie Company, were you one of the only OGs, or were there other people that were there for that long?
So do you remember Jay Kenny?
Yep.
He had come back to Charlie Company, and so he was definitely like the OG. He had left during, I want to say, the 15 deployment. So like, does that make sense? Like
Yep.
I had been there like consistently. He was there much before me, but then left and then came back for
Okay.
this deployment. So he was the platoon sergeant at one of the other platoons for
Okay.
4th Platoon. And then I think the other platoon sergeants for the most part were newer flight medics. There were a couple of pilots I think that were pretty senior, but a lot of new faces.
Okay.
And so I go to Shank or to Dalkey, and in 15 the whole AOR kind of died down. Well, really in 14 they changed the ROE from Operation Enduring Freedom to Operation Freedom Sentinel, OFS, and it really, they put a force cap. There could only be this many people in Afghanistan, and so a lot of people had to draw down. On that 15 deployment, I forgot to mention, but like our platoons were like 13 people strong.
Damn.
It was 3 flight crews and 2 ops people, and that's it. No one else was there. There was very restricted to who was, the number that was allowed to be in country. And so now in 18, new administration, new focus on the let's do a little bit more here. Let's get this over with kind of thing was sort of the feeling. And so there was no more force cap, or it was at least greater, and there was, it was picking back up. It was becoming more kinetic because with the, special operations or whatever doing more out in sector. But there wasn't really a lot of conventional units operating. You weren't like supporting 2nd Brigade of the 101st like back in the day where a bunch of platoons where the oldest guy's 20 are getting blown up. Now it was like everyone you supported was special operations of some sort, either our special operations or foreign special operations. For the most part, those were all the missions that we supported in 18, which made them somewhat more challenging and more kinetic and more difficult and higher stakes, because these are, these guys aren't calling you unless it's really
Yeah,
bad
it's a real
kind of
shit
thing.
going on.
And so we get there and IDF's the same. It's still Shank, even though it's a smaller footprint. It was pretty rough. And we get some pretty busy calls where like quickly our young crews are flying, picking up injured guys, and
Was it a lot of Americans or Afghani and Americans?
some of both. I would say probably predominantly Afghan commandos mostly, but we picked up definitely some Americans. And we would have aircraft. My guys went to an LZ where it was really, really, really dark, and when they landed, they were picking up, like, I think it was Brit or Aussie Special Forces. They didn't really have a flat LZ, but they didn't know because of how dark it was. And so they blew out a tire and they put some rocks through the bottom of the aircraft. And so when they came back to the FST, they're like, the aircraft's like, da-dum, 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 blown out wheel. And the Delta company there is like trying to patch it up. And we'd go and we did, one where they shot an RPG basically at our tail while we were on the ground, and it blew shrapnel through the tail. Same kind of thing. We come back, the Delta company's like, again, like, come on, you guys.
Yeah, it's the price of war.
And so
man.
we were getting aircraft into places that were dangerous, and they were coming back damaged, physically damaged from enemy fire, enemy contact, and it was wearing on the crews. It was a dangerous time. The sort of the most significant one of those missions, the story that I'll tell you is,
Before you get to that story, is this a deployment where you get your Distinguished Flying Cross?
Yeah, it is.
Is that the story you're about to tell?
Yep.
All right.
and really, you know, as a disclaimer, the story is really not about me. But we were tasked to take 2 aircraft to a kind of forward spot, because where this, you know, group of commandos and rangers is going to operate is kind of just outside the 2 medevac coverage areas of my platoon and Kenny's platoon. And because, you know, when the withdrawal happened, or as Afghanistan's consolidating, we closed a bunch of bases. So now if you want to get bad guys in this middle area between places, you're going to have to move aircraft around, because there was still a requirement to have medevac support within 1 hour to have an injured person to a surgeon. That was the kind of the goal. And so some of SOF would move surgeons closer, and some of, you know, SOF would move helicopters closer with surgeons on them. And the conventional force, the other option was move conventional medevac forward, because now we can get you quicker and we can just fly faster back to the surgeon. And so that's what we did.
And that's just so the audience knows, that's in reference to the golden hour and how important that is.
Yep. Yeah, so we found basically like any injury that you can get back to a surgeon within an hour, you know, increases the likelihood of that American survival dramatically.
Correct.
And that's you've talked about on your show, the requirement from Congress to be off the ground in 15 minutes that we mostly took to mean 8 or 9, 7 or 8 minutes. And we would train with 7 or 8 minutes being the goal, with 15 being the, like, you know, you're mundane, you're kind of, if you bust that, you're wrong. But if you get to that, you didn't try hard enough. Really, you should be in 8 or 9 minutes, you know, response time. And so we moved 2 aircraft forward. It's my platoon leader, Ben, is the pilot in command of the AMC, and I'm the platoon sergeant on that aircraft. And we had, you know, young crew chief, named Emmanuel Bynum, and then we had a younger E5 medic that's like his first deployment. He's RO1, but this is his first really combat mission. And so in my platoon, our rule was, I'm going to fly with you, even though you're RO1, I'm going to fly with you for a couple of duty cycles, and it's going to be like a see one, do one, teach one kind of time mentality. I'm going to watch you work. You're going to watch me work. I'm going to watch you work, and then I'll sign you off, sort of being like mission ready in Afghanistan, versus like I can fly the training area in the States because I'm RO1. Like that's not necessarily the same thing. And so we go out there and early in the morning, something like 3:00 in the morning, we get a call, and it's pretty straightforward. We pick up 2 casualties, and this young medic, Yanez, treats one of them. I treat one of them, and we get back to the little base we're staying at, and we put the aircraft to bed. And I'm like, all right, Yanez, like you're signed off. Like that was your see me do it. I did everything. I got the patients. I ran off the aircraft. I brought them back, and you know, now anything else we get today, it's like it's your turn, right? That was the you watched me do it. And we probably talked about a little improves and sustains kind of thing or whatever. And so we put the aircraft to bed, and something like just as daybreak is happening, something like, you know, 6 a.m. or something, we get another call for a gunshot wound to the chest. Same guys, you know, it's these you know, small group of Army Rangers with this large contingent of commandos doing a clearance operation, like Afghan commandos.
Okay.
And that's the same group we picked up from earlier. Same guys, same kind of ish area. We pretty much know where we're going, and so we rush out of the aircraft, get everything ready. We depart, you know, 7 minutes or whatever. And, you know, the sun's coming up. We're inbound to the LZ, and you know, the JTAC on the ground comes on the radio to give us the LZ brief. And you know how these guys are, they're cool and collected. You know, he's like, dust off, you know, approach from the left, you know, winds out 3-6 out of whatever, marking with purple smoke. You know, they're very cool. And so, there it is, purple smoke. Let's go make our landing. And so we come around to land and make our approach. And there's sort of like a series of kind of buildings to the right, and we're going to be landing to this purple smoke. And so we put the aircraft down. I remember being, you know, pretty dusty spot. You know, it's Afghanistan.
Yeah.
And we touch the ground, and Yanez throws the door open, jumps out, because I told him, hey, this is all you. Like, you go do it. And he starts running across this field, and just as his like feet touch the ground, we start hearing this like thud. I'm like, did like my carabiner fall on the floor? Like, what's going on? And then I'm like, oh shit, those are bullets. And so just rounds start hitting the aircraft, the skin of the aircraft, boom, boom, boom. And I look out the door and I see Yanez running across this field, and there's just puffs of dirt around his feet, just pew, pew, pew. And in my mind, all I'm thinking is, I just got that kid killed, right? I just asked him to do that, and there's no way. But the way that we had trained, my platoon, the standard was you have 90 seconds on the ground or we're leaving, and that's what we had trained, and we were pretty good at it. And so he said, like, it's probably worse for us to leave. He's got 90 seconds to get this dude. And as he's running across this field, and I see this like video game effect of like bullets hitting around him, I hear them hit the aircraft. This American comes running out, passing Yanez basically with an Afghan commander with him. And the Afghan drops to the ground with a machine gun and starts trying to shoot, and he's kind of shooting wherever. But this American posts himself to the landing gear on the right side of the aircraft, and he's got his weapon up, and he's an Army Ranger. He's got all of the right stuff. He looks like he's a killer, and he's just putting rounds downrange. And there's a couple of different positions shooting at us, and he's just suppressing all of this. And real quick, Yanez comes right back, right? He knows the rules. You got 90 seconds. He runs back with his casualty. We throw him in the aircraft. This Ranger's suppressing the enemy still. And Yanez, jumps in, and we shut the door. And I tell Major K, or, Krasowski, I'm like, all right, let's go. And so we lift off the ground. This kind of dust cloud engulfs us. And my crew chief goes, holy shit, he got shot. And we're like, I don't even know how to register that right now, right? Like, okay. And, we're still literally coming straight out of the dust. The radio cracks again. It's that same guy. It's that same JTAC, but now he's not all cool and calm. Now he's just saying, dust off, come back. You got to come back. And, it's that moment where you can tell in their voice that this isn't an ask. This is like a plea of, please do this for me. And so being the good pilot and command he has been, of course, asked me, Andrew, can we fit another one? And I'm like, yeah, of course. Like, we have to go. Like, you heard that. And he knows it. And we've talked about it. He knows that he was going to go back. He had that kind of visceral, I got to make sure everyone's okay with this sort of response. And so we all just go like, we're going back. And so he just flips around in the dust cloud, basically, and makes another approach. And this time, even on the approach, we can hear rounds hitting the fuselage, hitting the tail. And he tries to put the aircraft a little bit further to mask behind these buildings. We land the aircraft. And now it's my turn. I can't ask Yanez to go do this again, right? I just watched this sort of miraculous, he didn't get killed doing this. It's like, I'm the old guy. If anyone has to do this, it has to be me. And so I throw the door open and I run across, and it's sort of the same scene again. It's just, I can feel, these rounds hitting near me as I'm running across this field. And I don't even grab my aid bag. I don't grab my weapon. I just ran, and I grabbed the litter with this Army Ranger and these two commanders, and I just say, let's go. And we just start running back to the aircraft. And at this point, the friendly force had kind of maneuvered. There's a little bit more people trying to suppress the enemy. And we get him back, and we throw him into the aircraft. I jump in, I slam the door. I'm like laying on top of him, and I'm like, go, we're in. And so they pull pitch, and we head back to Shank. And in the aircraft, I'm working on this guy. He had been shot in the lower side, and he's not breathing, and we're working on him. We're doing, getting everything ready. There's also the initial patient that we were supposed to be taking care of. So we're trying to treat this guy. And I remember thinking like, how is he already dead? Like, he just looks dead. Like, what, how is this just happened? He's this tiny gunshot wound. Why is he this bad off? Mm-hmm. So I'm breathing for him, and I'm putting needles in it, and I'm trying to do all these things. And I hear the pilots. It's funny how you wash out all of the noise, except I hear the PI, the CW2 Jonathan Cole. He goes, hey, that's a master warning, land or something, something. That's a land as soon as possible. And that's what I heard was him say, this is a land as soon as possible. And I just hear Ben Krasowski go, yeah, but we're not going to. Yeah. Like, we're not going to land. Yeah. We're over these mountains. We have, we're going to fly this thing until the wheels fall off. Mm-hmm. And I guess, some of the rounds have gone through some hydraulic systems, and there was a number of different things that were failing or whatever. But when you talk to him, he's, I still felt like I had control of the aircraft. Like, this thing is meant to take some damage and have redundancy systems.
Correct.
And so we're not preliminary. And Cole knew that. He just was being a good, PI, telling him all the things I see on the dash and whatnot. But it's interesting to me that that's one of the things that I picked up was just that statement. But ultimately we get back to the FST and that Ranger died of his wounds. They pronounced him there that round had gone through his left ventricle of his heart. And so, it was somewhat, not much we were going to be able to do for that.
Yeah.
But then we have to refit the aircraft, and we got to go back to be ready for the next thing. And so the aircraft, I remember dropping off the patient, giving him to the surgeons, and coming back out because they're still in a firefight over there. We got to get staged again. And I remember everyone pulling the gear off the bird, and I'm like, what are you guys doing? And they've shut it down, and my crew chief is just kind of looking at it. I'm like, what are you doing? And he's like, look at this. There's just holes everywhere, through the doors, through the windows, through the tail, through the engine cowling, through the fuel cell, and up until basically that main landing gear. And he goes, hey, look, where that guy was standing right here, by the main landing gear, there's no more bullets further forward. There's no bullets by the cockpit, basically, right? Like, you shoot one of those pilots or really damage one of those flight control systems, like, you're probably not leaving that landing zone. And where he stood was like a physical wall of no more rounds past him. And so where he stood to suppress the enemy, shielded us from the vital portions of the aircraft from being damaged. And there was something like, over 30 holes through the aircraft in the rest of it. And so he died protecting us so that we could leave that LZ. And
that's the Ranger y'all picked up, right?
That's the Ranger, right? And that is Sergeant First Class Christopher Solis, who was awarded the Medal of Honor a little bit later, a couple of years later, for some earlier actions of fighting the enemy, but ultimately sort of, ending with his last action, which was to keep me safe and our crew. And then, this past year, we got to come up here for the Quad A Aviation Hall of Fame induction of Sergeant First Class Solis into the Aviation Hall of Fame, which was really cool to see sort of our community, the aviation community, recognize him also for that. And then being that the five of us are sort of the benefactors of his heroism was cool to me, because he's an Army Ranger. He was an engineer, right? He was a mortar platoon sergeant. Like, he has no ties to Army aviation except that sort of last heroic action to protect us. And so I'm somewhat blessed that the aviation community, recognizes him, and I'm tremendously blessed that he gave his life for me and for the five of us.
Yeah, that's powerful. That's powerful. It's amazing to see that level of sacrifice, because you think about it, you as a flight medic, you do that, you put yourself in harm's way all the time, and then you see this Ranger that you never met, and he actually gives his life for you guys just to keep you guys alive, and that's pretty it's pretty profound.
Yeah, while we were still in Afghanistan, the Rangers sent some people to interview us as like part of their debrief. And one, this guy, he's like not even in a uniform, and he comes and asks us these questions, and he says, like, his last question was like, do you think he knew what he was doing? Like, do you think he did it knowing the risk? And I was like, are you serious? Of course he did. Like, you don't become an E7 in the Ranger Regiment and do that just because it was a reaction. Like, damn well what you're getting yourself into. And that's the difference between sort of like a mistake and heroism, right? Or stupidity and heroism. It's like, he knew the risk and did it. And so that's the story of Sergeant First Class Christopher Solis, saving our lives and giving his life for us.
Man, God has sent you. He was a true angel in your life. Man. That's crazy. You got like 9 5, 8 6 there. Man. That's just a true testament right there, man. That you continue to do the right things in life, God will protect you. And I watched some videos of the, what's his name again?
Solis.
Christopher Solis. I watched some videos and just touched upon his story, and just to see that level of sacrifice and
Yeah.
Because he had a family himself, right?
Yeah. And actually at Quad A, we met his wife, which was really cool. And I won't speak for my whole crew, but I know for me, I was incredibly nervous to meet her, right? Like how do you meet this woman whose husband is dead and I'm part of why, right? Like he did it for me. And she was just the sweetest person, right? And just she kept asking how we were, and it was a really cool experience to meet her and to see her strength in losing that person to her, right? And that their daughter is, lost that person in her life. And my daughters still have their dad, right? And so you almost feel a little bit selfish about it. But I think to feel selfish about it is to take away what he actually did, right?
I agree.
And what he gave to us wasn't because we asked him. It was because he knew it was the right thing to do in the moment, and he did it.
Doing the right thing, once again, pays off. I want to ask you, with you saving so many lives, and now that you get to meet the wife and just have that gentleman, sacrifice his life to save yours, how does that make you feel, and how does that essentially lead you to carry on how you're going to live your life for the rest of your life?
Yeah, that's the $1,000,000 question, right? Like, it's easy to have either like survivor's guilt or like imposter syndrome, right? And so I think I had a fair amount of survivor's guilt from my first experience in Afghanistan with the vehicle bomb that killed 6 guys in my platoon, and why not me and all of that. But I think that what I learned from that first experience is that we're not in control of these things. Correct. And that God is. And so if you try to make it make sense, you're sort of saying like, God, I don't trust that you have this in control, and so tell me why it happened this way. And like that's kind of a dumb thing to ask God for, right? And so I think I was in some sense better equipped to handle this situation personally because I had experienced that the first time. And after this, we sat around the campfire and lit some cigars and talked through some of the emotion and the feelings, the way that Danny did with us all those years ago. I don't know if that answered your question.
No, I did it. I mean, that's fine. How did you feel when you got 2 questions here? How did you feel when you got awarded the Distinguished Flying Cross for that mission, and how did you feel when he got awarded that Medal of Honor?
Yeah, that's a really good question. So when we were awarded the Distinguished Flying Crosses, first, there was some questions from our battalion of like, who should get awarded and that kind of thing. And I think I really am grateful for my platoon leader, Ben, because, he told my battalion commander basically like the crew did this together. There's no person on this that did, because initially it was kind of like, well, should the pilot in command get an award, and so it was like, he's saying like, I'm not the only person here that deserves some recognition. And so then it was like, well, should Andrew, because he's the senior, and I was like, no. Like, if you all could die together, you all deserve recognition together, in my opinion, right? We used to joke, if you can burn together. And then the second part of it was that, like, truthfully, this is a crew's decision. We talk about it all the time in aviation safety about, in civilian EMS, you say the 3 to go, 1 to say no kind of rule. In the Army, it's probably 4 or maybe 5. But it's basically saying that, like, any person has equal say in saying, I'm not comfortable with this decision, especially when you're talking about aviation safety, or in this case, safety because of the enemy. And so each of those people on that crew made the decision to go back, knowing full well the hazards of what we just came out of, and saying it's the right thing to do. And to be completely honest, like, our entire medevac legacy is built on this, right? We did an LPD before, when Ben and I first took over the platoon, we made all the guys read The Flying Dead Men, which is a book from Vietnam about the start of medevac. And it talks about Charles Kelly and all of these guys that fought tooth and nail to have dedicated helicopters with dedicated crews for the sole mission of evacuating the sick and injured. And at the time, helicopters were getting ransacked for assaults because all the assault birds were getting busted up. And he said, if you don't leave my helicopters during the day when you do your assaults, we won't have them for the night when you need to do medevacs, basically. And more guys will die from it. And so they finally got these dedicated helicopters. And right, I mean, you know the story, but you know, here's an LZ that's all hot as hell, and you know, guys are dying. These guys are dying, and here comes Major Charles Kelly as the pilot in command of his Huey, and the ground force says, you know, like, wave off, like, don't land here. And he says, I'll leave when I have you wounded, right? And he says, like, this is my job. This is my sacred calling, to support the warfighter. Back to the first comment, right? Support the warfighter by always showing up when you call me. And without too much of a tangent, there was another mission, that deployment, where we picked up some SF guys, and one of them had been trapped under the vehicle that had gotten blown up, and a portion of his body was under the vehicle, and a portion of his body wasn't, and so we flew his remains. But later that night, they uncovered the rest of him, and they called a 911 for it, and we had to say no. Our task force wouldn't let us fly for purely the remains. And I've never felt more sick to my stomach than when we got in the aircraft, went to fly. The task force came back and said, "Oh, that's a body recovery, not a medevac. We'll send an assault bird, you know, a little bit later to do that," or whatever. And so that solidifies it, right? It's like, that is you know, and I don't blame the battalion for not letting us. I understand losing an aircraft and, you know, whatever, right? But that's the sacred bond that you're at risk of losing if you say no to that. That ground force had to put that guy in the back of a truck in a body bag and drive him the rest of the way back, right? Like, that's not what you want to do.
Correct.
And that's the bond you have to maintain. And so, you know, Charles Kelly saying, "I'll leave only when I have you wounded," and then being mortally shot and killed doing that mission. It's like, that is the personification. That's the epitome of what our mission is, that we are all sort of trying to live up to. And so anyway, coming back to the award, you know, telling the battalion, like, all of these guys need to be recognized. They all upheld their obligation to the ground force. They all did it with distinction and honor. And so it was very humbling and proud for me to see my crew, myself included, but my crew, get recognized that way. And then, to make this full circle, it's funny how the Army does this. Here comes 2-star General Walrath to shake my hand at Bagram during the awards ceremony. And I said, "Hey, sir, I don't know if you remember this, but you're the one that let me go be a flight medic." And so he sent an email to my battalion commander and said, "Hey, I want to send a note to 6. And my battalion commander was like, "Why is there a general calling me about you?" You know? And I was like, "It's kind of a long story," but he sent me a little encouraging note, which was pretty cool.
Did General Walrath, did he remember you?
I don't think he remembered me, like, that he had told me that. He just knew that, like, he was very connected to Charlie Company from you guys. And I told him, "Hey, one of our NCOs is the guy that medevaced you, and like, I remember you coming to the hangar." I don't know that he remembered that I was in strike all those years ago, and he had said, "Hey, you know, I'll let you do this because I'm going to ask my formation to do things that are really dangerous, and they're going to do it because they know you're going to come for them."
Yeah. You know, you said something very, very profound. I think that's what's important with the integrity of medevac, right? That no matter what, we're going to come.
Right.
And the ground guys need to know this, because they need to have some type of mental clarity, because when shit's going on, like you said, the last thing these ground guys want to be doing is carrying their dead buddies with them. From a moral standpoint, that's a mental mind fuck right there, right?
Yeah.
So just that alone, that we have to always show up, and guys like you, me, and we will always push that envelope to ensure that we hold our end of the bargain, because once again, it's about the ground guys. That's all it's about, right? And making sure these guys can come home. So yeah, man, hats off to you. And
then to answer your other part of that question, about Solis and being awarded the Medal of Honor. So, you know, I did feel weird for a while, where the 5 of us had received the Distinguished Flying Cross. And then my battalion commander called and said, "Hey, General Miller wants to upgrade 2 of these awards. And, you know, he wants to upgrade Sergeant Yanez and Specialist Bynums, the 2 newest junior guys that really put everything on the line without maybe totally fully understanding what was going on. And so, at Quad A, the year we got back, General McConville, awarded them the Silver Star to each of them.
Wow.
And so now, I mean, this is incredible, and you're supposed to be really happy about this. And I'm very proud of my crew, but you feel kind of weird that the guy that died protecting you has not been recognized. Almost no one knows his name. And there was a heart-wrenching photo of that unit's redeployment where they gave his daughter a medal for him. And, it's a Bronze Star with Valor or something like that they give to his daughter. And I just, you lose all the wind in your sails. Your stomach sinks. You're like, how is this fair? Now, we had some kind of inside scoop that we were pretty confident that the regiment was pursuing the Medal of Honor for him, but we were just waiting with bated breath that I just want to see that. I want to see it because it's the right thing, but also because it will sort of make me feel not guilty that I was recognized for this thing that really he did way more than me on. And so it was sometime during COVID. I want to say it was 2021. We saw it. And the president gave his wife the Medal of Honor, reads his citation, and you feel over the moon. I mean, obviously nothing is enough for his life,
correct,
but it's something that our nation can say that's the highest thing that we respect our heroes for, and this guy's deserving of it.
Yeah.
So that was really impactful, and then it's also it sort of validates that it is a big deal.
Yeah.
It's a big deal to maintain your sort of oath to the nation that says, I will do everything to include my life in protection of this thing and the people that do it. And so to see the nation recognize that person, it's okay, that's the way it should be.
I'm happy that we have gentlemen like that in this country.
Yeah, me too.
Because without them, I'm not sure where we'd be at, man, because that's a special human being right there. Very special. When you get back from your last deployment, what'd you do next in the Army?
Yeah, so it's 2018, and at this point, I'm kind of a little bit burnt out of flying and deploying. I also know that my time's coming, and so I'd like to be in charge of my destiny versus just go wherever the Army tells me to. My platoon leader, Ben, he's off to career course. The platoon's already kind of breaking up, and it feels like the right time to kind of to move on. And so we take orders to Fort Irwin, California. It's the other side of the country. There's a medevac company there that supports the training area of the National Training Center. And so we PCS out there, and I take over as the first sergeant for the medevac company that's part of the garrison of Fort Irwin. And that's a really kind of wild experience. It's middle of the desert. You might as well be on an island or on Mars.
Yeah.
And then it's during all of COVID, right? So all of those lockdowns and the restrictions and all this stuff, you're being deployed. You're on a little fob in the desert. But that company flies more medevac missions than any other company in the United States, any other Army company, right? And so, there's so many people that get hurt, whether it be a heat casualty or a tank rollover in the National Training Center. And then we also, because we're so isolated, we support the local hospital and all of the family members that are on Fort Irwin, high-risk pregnancies to, strokes and heart attacks. And you fly all those people out to Los Angeles and Vegas. And so we did that for 2 years. And that was a really, really good experience.
How'd you feel being a first sergeant?
I loved it. I loved it because it's you're close enough to the people doing the job that you really feel that your experience can be important and impactful to them. Some of them would probably say that I was kind of a jerk. And I was, I had a lot of sense of, this isn't a game. We're not doing this because it's cool. We're doing this because this is our mission, and it's very dangerous. And I remember chewing them out one time for just flying with the cabin doors open just because it was hot out. And I was like, I don't care that it's hot out. You fly those cabin doors open, in a medevac where your job is to pick up a patient, and I promise you that not everything's secured in the back.
Correct.
That you're opening medicines and bottles and all these things, and they would, oh well, first time we'll have the doors closed if there's a patient inside. It's like, well then why have the doors open ahead of time? You train as you fight.
Mm-hmm.
You need to be comfortable with the equipment you have, and little things like that. They didn't really like it very much, but I think in the long run they saw that my focus was on the mission. And so as much as they might not agree with all of the decisions, they were all designed to support the mission. They weren't in lack of experience or lack of mission preparedness.
You think every step of your military career prepared you for being a first sergeant?
Being a first sergeant of a medevac company, yeah, I would say so. Being a first sergeant in general is about advising the commander for the best things for the soldiers. But being a first sergeant in a technical company where you also are a technical expert in that thing is incredible, because you also get to be an advisor for the technical aspects of the company. And so now, what worries me is being a first sergeant of a company I know nothing about, and all I'm good for is the admin and the people. And it's like that's that kind of risk.
Yeah.
So being a first sergeant of a medevac company was incredible.